Chapter 1818. It was a man called Yi Mu. He was also an undead from 600 years ago. He must be related to Jin Rongfeng. At least, they must know each other. As I expected, Yi Mu told us a story from 600 years ago. It was at that moment that I realized there was a reason why she was my love tribulation. 600 years ago, she was my disciple. She was my true disciple. Yi Mu was her personal guard. He was loyal to her. For her, he was willing to wander the mortal world for 600 years. I still had a strange feeling in my heart, but I couldn't say anything. After all, with one more person protecting her, I would be more at ease. However, Yi Mu's appearance made me sure of one thing. I wasn't someone who was indifferent to everything. At least, when I faced her, I felt like I was a domineering and black-bellied person. Although I didn't show it on the surface, I couldn't hide my emotions. Drinking and singing with her in the middle of the night, watching her lips touch mine in that instant, with the rich fragrance of wine and faint sweetness. No one in this world knew that under my calm appearance, my heart was in turmoil. What I wanted to do the most was to pull her into my arms without saying a word and pounce on her. This evil thought didn't just flash through my mind. It stayed there for a long time. It turned out, when you meet someone you like, even the hell's messenger couldn't escape the impulse. After that, we drank for a long time and told each other a lot of things. She said she had been looking for someone important to her. She said that person had been waiting for her. No matter if it was hell or heaven, he was waiting for her. Even if time was endless and she couldn't see the end, she would still continue to wait. She said, that person seemed to be me. I looked at her clear eyes, and the corners of my lips curled up. I was moved, although in the end, I controlled myself. It wasn't until the second time she was in danger that I finally vented all my emotions. Because this time, she knew there was danger but didn't tell me. She wanted to face a 600-year-old vengeful spirit alone. Didn't she know that she was just a human? If I wasn't the hell's messenger and was just a human, I wouldn't be Jin Rongfeng's opponent, let alone her. Luckily, I still came. Fortunately, she was safe and sound. Fortunately, he had protected her. Since then, I have been very sensitive. When it came to her safety, he was completely focused on it. He was deeply afraid that the slightest mishap would occur. When Ming-Si appeared, my heart almost jumped out of my throat, because I knew very well what kind of person Ming-Si was. He was the yin-yang man who held the highest authority in the mortal world and the underworld. The only order he gave us, the Hell Messengers, was that we must pass the 600 years of love tribulation. When I stood in front of Luo Qingshan and prepared to fight to the death, he said he wouldn't hurt us. He said he could hold a wedding for us, and he would be the witness. He said that now was the best time. The bride's wedding dress would definitely be beautiful. Chapter 1819. But I felt strangely unsettled. Ming-Si must know something. He just didn't want us to have any regrets. I asked him after the wedding, and he didn't deny it, but he also didn't admit it. Later I learned that he wanted to leave a child for me and Luo Qingshan. I didn't understand. Even if it was a 600-year-old vengeful spirit, as long as Luo Qingshan stayed in the library, I could guarantee her safety. Because I knew that Jin Rongfeng couldn't come in. This library was where the hell's emissary came from. The stronger the vengeful spirit, the more it would suffer a backlash. Jin Rongfeng couldn't come in. I was 100% certain. But I never thought that the hell's emissary Hong Yu would betray me, betray the hell's emissary, and even betray the entire underworld. Actually, I could feel the fluctuations in her mood over the past few days. For Luo Qingshan's safety, I had already moved her out of the library. I never thought that she would actually make a deal with that ghost. When the Qing character appeared on my right palm for the third time, I was strangely nervous and excited. This was the bond between him and her. He knew that their child would come into this world soon. He knew that he had to take out the netherworld sword and personally scatter Jin Rongfeng's soul, turning it into ashes. I didn't know what to say to her. I just knew that I wanted to break my promise to her and leave her when my right hand tightly held her right hand and the characters on my palm began to fuse together. Large amounts of memories filled my mind. In my memories, I was still called Du Jiusheng, and she was still called Luo Qingshan. I was still hopelessly in love with her like in this life, but the final ending was bleak. She would never know that when I accepted these memories, I actually felt lucky. Lucky that no matter how hard it was in the past, I still protected her. Using all my strength, using all my life, sitting in our new house, I said my goodbyes in silence. She cried like a child, desperately begging me to keep living. At that moment, my heart ached when I saw her eyes. I really wanted to protect her, to be able to see her smile every day. Kissing in the morning until death, never stopping. A long time later, when his soul was split apart day and night, he would suffer endless pain in the unbounded land. As long as I remember her appearance that day, I can endure it again and again. Even if my soul fragments were to shatter into pieces, I would still grit my teeth and live on. Because I promised her that no matter where I am, I will live on and protect her. I originally thought that I would never see her again in this lifetime. I would bitterly endure here until I could no longer bear it and my soul would scatter. But what I didn't expect was that she would actually break into the underworld with an ancient divine artifact in her stomach. I wanted to help her, but there was nothing I could do. I stood in unbounded land and watched as she walked towards me with blood all over her body. I looked at her unwavering expression, her determination to come to me. At this moment, I suddenly relaxed. Perhaps, even if the time I spent with her was only a few seconds, as long as she was by my side, no matter what the outcome was, it would be fine. She said that our child is called Nyenin. She said that this time, we will live and die together. I looked at her eyebrows and kissed her between her eyebrows. With a pong sound, the thunder and fire of the unbounded land scattered our souls. When my life came to an end, I never regretted falling in love with her. I didn't regret returning to the dream. I only regretted being in a rush. I hoped that we could meet again. Chapter 1820. He blinked and blinked again. Luo Qingshan could feel the silence around her, but the scene of the unbounded land flashed in front of her eyes. When a heavenly lightning fell down, she lost all consciousness. Welcome back, host. Although the system's voice was still mechanical, one could hear that it was a bit excited. After all, they hadn't had this kind of good conversation in a long time. She felt that it had been a long time since she was in this special world, so long that she almost forgot her identity. She forgot that she was an executor of a space and time mission. It was probably because Du Jiusheng had truly returned to her life that she couldn't come back to her senses. The host can choose to rest or watch the scene before you die. I won't watch it. She gently shook her head. In fact, she could feel that when the heavenly lightning struck down, the soul fragments that had long been shattered into pieces still protected her. Actually, she saw him turn into ashes in front of her. His soul fragments scattered into the sky, and under the huge bright moon, it was so beautiful that it couldn't be imagined. It was a kind of desolate beauty. It was only in the next second that she felt everything in front of her go black, and she lost all her senses. I want to see the scene of Nyenin. Is that all right? Yes, but it's only fragments. In an instant, the bronze mirror emitted a light blue smoke that surrounded the mirror in layers. There was a youth that appeared in the image. He was wearing a white shirt standing on the field, and his chestnut hair fluttered in the wind. His deep eyes had a faint Liguang look to them. Raising his hand and looking up, he was so handsome that it couldn't be imagined. Dong! A beautiful three-point shot, and the field was filled with cheers. The scene changed, and he was already 30 years old. Standing in front of the window on the 35th floor, there was a blue moon glass fan on the desk. The secretary came in with a hot figure as she looked at him. Director Du, you're not off work yet. He didn't turn around as he softly replied, you can get off work. Be careful on the road. Before the other side could finish, the youth cut her off. His eyes were deep and filled with worry. In the next second, the bronze mirror gradually dimmed and became an ordinary mirror. He doesn't have anyone he likes? No, I spent my life alone. You have power, influence, and talent, but you don't have a loved one. Sure enough, he's exactly the same as his father. Luo Qingshan bitterly smiled with some heartache. Another person obsessed with death. Actually, she's very similar to the host. There seem to be a lot of obsessive people in this world. Either they didn't love, or they love deeply. The following is a summary of the data for this mission. Please read it carefully. Name: Luo Qingchen Dimension. Hell's Messenger's exclusive love appraiser. Mission completion rate: 100%. There are currently 5 items in the express storage. April 5th Exquisite Ring, 9-section Moon Whip, Phoenix Dance Sword, Universal Medicine Box. Permanent ability: Spacetime Freeze LV4 Upgrade. Permanent ability: Teleportation LVL 1 Exchange Points, 12,000 base points. 40. The host's 31st mission panel is below. In the next second, the image in the bronze mirror changed. Mission level: Experience gained 500. Female lead: Luo Qingchen male lead, Nan Yixing supporting female lead, Eugene supporting male lead. Mu Hanch mission content: return to 3 years before the death of the female lead and obtain the love of the male lead. Chapter 1821. After accepting all the memories of the previous owner, Luo Qingchen felt for the first time how frightening it was to be born with an obsession. The previous owner entered the palace at the age of 9 and became the maid of the supporting male lead Mu Hanch. The supporting male lead Mu Hanch was the 3rd son of the Mu King, born from a concubine of a lowly status. At that time, the previous owner didn't care about it and only felt that she finally had a home after drifting for 4 years. She didn't have any memories before the age of 5. Only a long time later did she find out that those memories had disappeared because she was poisoned. In this world divided into 3, the Mu country was the weakest among the 3 countries. Therefore, the Mu King worked hard all year round and ended up with a body full of illnesses. The Mu King had 3 wives. The first wife gave birth to a son, the second wife gave birth to a daughter, and the one with the lowest status was Mu Hanch. This was because his mother was a singer in a dance hall, an occupation that everyone despised. Even though she sold her body and not her skills, she was still looked down upon in the palace. There were always people who said that Mu Hanch's birth was an accident. It wasn't that the Mu King wanted to give birth to him, but that his mother got pregnant too easily. The previous owner was brought into the palace by the eunuch who took care of Mu Hanch. The first time she saw Mu Hanch, he was only 15 years old. He was wearing a black robe, and his eyes carried a trace of unfathomable gloom. The kind of gaze didn't seem like a 15-year-old youth's. In the future, you will be called Little Chun. You can call me Young Master. Yes, Young Master. Mu Hanch glanced at the eunuch with a meaningful gaze and nodded indifferently. The previous owner was ostracized when she first entered the palace. After all, she didn't have any status in the palace, not to mention that she was only a little maid. One night, when she was bullied until her face was bruised and swollen, Mu Hanch used a black handkerchief to wipe the blood from the corner of her mouth. He looked at her and said, "Only by becoming strong will no one bully you. Young Master, if you become my secret guard, I will let an expert teach you martial arts." At that time, the previous owner didn't completely understand Mu Hanch's meaning and only nodded obediently. Actually, Mu Hanch would never know that no matter if it was a secret guard or anything else, as long as he gave the order, the original owner would do anything for him. From that day onwards, the original owner was no longer Mu Hanch's personal palace maid. She was brought to a secret room in the palace by her eunuch. There were more than 30 people inside, and each of them was covered in wounds. The damp secret room was filled with the smell of blood. The original owner felt her stomach churn. Everyone looked at her coldly without any emotion in their eyes. From today onwards, you will receive training here. Young Master wants me to tell you that if you want to live, you have to grit your teeth and persevere. The eunuch whispered the last sentence into her ear. It was probably because of this sentence that the original owner gritted her teeth and tried her best to survive no matter how difficult it was. 3 years later, there were only 7 people left out of the 30 or so people. They didn't kill each other. Those who died couldn't bear such inhumane torture and killed themselves. The remaining 7 people held each other's hands tightly. They were each other's one and only. The most outstanding person among them was the original owner, and the 2 people who were closest to the original owner were called Song Lu and Chi Mo. They were known as the 3 most powerful swordsmen among the secret guards. They risked their lives for Mu Hanch and continuously completed those unsightly missions. Chapter 1822. They had experienced countless moments of life and death. Every time they returned, Mu Hanch would only nod his head indifferently and allow them to apply medicine to their wounds. The original owner of the body could never understand how a person could be so indifferent. They had risked their lives for him, but he didn't even give them a word of affirmation. He was as indifferent as a piece of thousand-year-old ice. No one could approach him. However, the young and frivolous original owner of the body didn't believe in this. On a snowy day, she came to Mu Hanch's bedroom from a secret room. There seemed to be a charcoal fire inside. Just standing at the door, she could feel a wave of warmth coming from her feet. Just as she was about to walk up and knock on the door was opened. Her figure was extremely fast, as she used the shrubs at the side to hide her figure. However, the scene she saw caused her heart to ache so much that she couldn't say a single word. Mu Hanch, who had always been indifferent in her eyes, was actually caressing a woman. She was wearing a milky white dress embroidered with butterflies and hundreds of flowers. A silver, gold-plated, gem-studded jade hairpin was inserted on her head. She looked so noble and gorgeous. She, on the other hand, was dressed in a clean but patched night suit without any accessories on it. Compared to the woman standing next to Mu Hanch, she seemed so petty, so insignificant. The original owner of the body stood at the same spot and watched everything that was happening in front of her. She felt as if her heart had died. It turned out that she liked and worshipped Mu Hanch so much. It was just that she was unwilling to admit it. After the eunuch escorted the woman away, Mu Hanch raised his eyes and looked in her direction, saying, "Come out." His voice was very cold, like a block of ice, intimidating her heart and soul. The original owner of the body slowly walked out and knelt on the snowy ground with a thump. She bowed and said, "Greetings to young master." Amen. Mu Hanch nodded indifferently and said, "Come in with me." If the original owner of the body only had a bitter, unrequited love and worship, this was the only night she was alone with Mu Hanch in the same room. He took out a jar of wine and gave it to her. For some reason, the original owner of the body, who was usually especially afraid of him, didn't refuse this time. She opened the lid of the wine jar and gulped it down. Mu Hanch narrowed his eyes as he indifferently looked at her brows. A faint light flashed through his eyes that were as dark as a lake in the night. He narrowed his eyes and looked at her clear eyes and slightly red cheeks. His right hand instantly lifted her chin and kissed her. It was probably this kiss that led the original owner to a dead end. According to Song Lu, Mu Hanch had personally escorted him back to the secret room that night. She even giggled and asked her if she wanted a sparrow to fly to a branch and become a phoenix. When the original owner heard this, she just laughed awkwardly. However, Chimo's complexion wasn't good. He seriously looked at the original host and told her that Mu Hanch was different from what she had imagined. He was willing to pay any price to get what he wanted. As his secret guards, they were merely his chess pieces. At that time, the original owner was very angry and refuted him, angrily wanting to break off relations with him. A life and death friendship. It was all because she did not wish for others to speak ill of Mu Hanch. But it turned out that Chimo was right, because 3 days later, Mu Hanch announced his wedding date to the public. The person he was marrying was the woman she saw outside the main hall that day. It was said that she was the princess of Jade Nation and was called Eugene Er. Chapter 1823. As the Jade Nation was stronger than the Mu Nation, even if the Mu King wanted to betroth her to his legitimate son, Mu Zhaoyong, he was powerless to do so. Eugene Er was the Jade King's favorite. Be it in the Jade Nation or the Mu Nation, no one dared to disobey her. A month later, Mu Hanch married Eugene Er. In the eyes of outsiders, they were a perfect match. Only the original owner of the body quietly shed tears in the secret chamber. Only Song Lu and Chimo were by her side. Chimo couldn't bear to see her so distressed and said, "Let's leave this place and wander the world." Song Lu nodded without any hesitation. The original owner of the body resolutely decided to leave this sad place when she saw their eyes. She was determined to live an ordinary life from now on. Neither the palace nor Mu Hanch had anything to do with her. Little did she know that they were found by Mu Hanch less than 3 days after they escaped from the palace. At that time, he was standing on a high platform and looking at Luo Qingshun, who was being protected by Song Lu and Mo, with a trace of worry flashing through his deep eyes. The next second, he looked at them coldly and said, "I'll give you a chance. Only one can live." Since his hidden guards chose to escape, they had to leave their lives behind if he found them. But this time, he gave them a choice. Only one of them could live. This was a choice that bordered on despair. It wasn't a chance at all. At this moment, Mo and Song Lu stood in front of her at the same time, with resolute expressions in their eyes. To them, the original owner of the body was their little lass, someone they could protect with their lives. Mo took a step forward and shielded Song Lu behind him. He raised his head and looked at Mu Hanch. "Can you let them go? Everything was my idea. Young master, please kill me." "I thought I would kill you." Mu Hanch narrowed his eyes, a cold light flashing through them. "Do you think I can't tell what you're thinking?" Every time he was by Luo Qingchen's side, every time he made her laugh, his heart would always be filled with discomfort. He hated Mo from the bottom of his heart. He didn't know why, but this feeling kept sprouting in the depths of his heart. "It's good that you know. It's a pity that I can't have it." Mo raised his head and puffed out his chest, carrying the unyielding spirit of a man. However, there was an indescribable loneliness in his words. Even if they were his secret guards, this time, he stood in front of them without flinching, until a long arrow steadily pierced through his heart. He fell down just like that. The original owner and Song Lu exclaimed and hugged Mo. They shook their heads desperately and muttered, "No, no, Chimo's Chi," but before he died, he gazed deeply into Luo Qingchen's eyes and said, I really. But Song Lu was on the verge of breaking down as he bawled and wailed, Mo, but she couldn't but she still couldn't control her feelings. She liked Mo. For her, if she liked something, she would just look at it from afar. She could protect Mo, but she could also protect the original owner. When the two of them completely collapsed, Mu Hanch's cold eyes narrowed as he looked at her. "I'll give you a chance. Marry to the Nanzhao kingdom. Make Ning Yixing fall in love with you, and then kill him. This is the last task I'll give you. After you succeed, you can take Song Lu and fly far away." "Don't promise him." Song Lu tightly grasped her hand. "I'm not afraid of death." Chapter 1824. The original host left Mu country with such a burden, dressed in plain white brocade, and headed for Nanzhao country. Song Lu was detained by Mu Hanch in Mu country because he had an inexplicable, uneasy feeling. He was afraid that the original host would never return. After all, the crown prince of Nanzhao country, Nan Yisheng, was a man with a bewitching appearance. Although he had never seen him before, he was worried that the original host would never return. And Song Lu was his last trump card. Mu Hanch clearly knew that as long as Song Lu was in his hands, Luo Qingshun would definitely return. On the day of parting, Song Lu looked at her with reluctance and kept urging, "Live, live." She nodded faintly, revealing a faint, bitter smile. Song Lu was right. For assassins like them, the most important thing was to live. Because only by living could they complete their mission. Only by living could they have value. The journey to Nanzhao country was very long. It took them half a month to reach the palace. When the original host saw Nan Yixing for the first time, she was indeed shocked. He was warm like a gentle spring breeze, and the way his lips curved was indescribably handsome. But her mission was to kill him. Relying on her beauty, the original host finally succeeded in entering the palace of Nanzhao country. Moreover, she thought of a way to become a palace made in Nan Yixing's palace. He had a good temper with every servant, but there was a faint emotion in his good temper. It was as if he had seen through the world of mortals. There was a faint gentleness and a faint coldness in his indifference. There were many ways to get Nan Yixing's attention, whether it was a chance encounter in the garden or a teacup that cut her finger. Unfortunately, none of them succeeded. When the sons of the Nanzhao Kingdom's king competed, Nan Yisheng, who was already weak, didn't intend to participate. However, his brave third brother insisted that the crown prince was the future king of the Nanzhao Kingdom. If he couldn't even protect the kingdom, then he would fail to live up to the Nanzhao king's cultivation. When Nanzhao king heard this, he only nodded and said, "Don't go too far." When the two sides met, Nan Yisheng was naturally not Nan Yong's match and was defeated in a few moves. However, Nan Yong didn't stop there. Instead, he stabbed his sword towards his heart. The host saved him. Nan Yisheng only noticed the original owner at that moment and was stunned. The story ended very quickly in the original owner's memory. The original owner took advantage of this opportunity to become Nan Yisheng's personal palace maid. Little by little, she poisoned his food and finally succeeded in killing him. Actually, the original owner had always been very hesitant, so the amount of poison she used was half of what Mu Hanch had told her. However, Nan Yisheng's body collapsed very quickly. Although he didn't fall in love with her, he was on the verge of death in less than 3 months. On the day of Nan Yisheng's death, the original owner didn't go to see him one last time. Instead, she quietly left the palace. If the person she owed the most in this life was Mo, then the person she owed the most was Nan Yisheng. Because ever since she was seriously injured because of him, he treated her well. Although there were no feelings between men and women, Nan Yisheng had done enough for the relationship between master and servant. However, even so, he couldn't change the original owner's mind. Chapter 1825. After completing the mission, the original owner didn't return to the Mu Empire. Instead, she went to another place alone and died of illness 3 years later. Before she died, she thought of Song Lu, Mo, and Nan Yisheng, but she didn't think of Mu Hanch. She seemed to have disappeared from all the memories in her life, suddenly becoming barren. And then, she regretted it. Some love was destined to have a tragic ending from the beginning, but she kept falling because of a kiss. It was probably this obsession that brought the bronze mirror, resulting in Luo Qingqian's appearance. She appeared on the day the carriage arrived in the Nanzhao Kingdom. Has the host sorted out all the memories? The system indicated that a full 6 hours had passed. Did the host go to another plane to tour around? I'm suddenly not used to having someone chattering next to my ear. Isn't this an A-rank mission? I have to think about it carefully. System notification. In the original owner's plane, the male lead didn't die. What does that mean? He didn't die? Yes, the host needs to slowly unlock the specific reason. After Luo Qingqian heard this, she had an urge to beat the system up, but she endured it. Since she came to this plane, everything should be based on the story's location. The system would settle accounts with it in the future. First of all, putting aside the matters of the Mu Empire, what kind of person was the crown prince of the Nanzhao Kingdom, Nan Yisheng? In the original owner's memories, he didn't have any official concubines or concubines. Even if she was injured because of him, she only became a first-rank palace maid and received careful care. Looking at the bustling streets, Luo Qingqian couldn't help shaking her head and muttering, as expected of an A-rank mission. I can't even figure out the male lead's personality. Luo Qingqian didn't have time to think too much and found an inn to stay for the night. The next day, she followed the original owner's routine and applied for the position of palace maid. The original owner was very good-looking. Her watery, starry eyes were especially clear, and her pair of dimples revealed a faint cuteness. Her appearance was instantly noticed by the imperial concubine of the Bureau of Rights. That afternoon, she entered the imperial palace and became a palace maid in the Hall of Supreme Harmony. The Hall of Supreme Harmony was the bedchamber of the current king of the Nanzhao Kingdom. Standing at the entrance of the Hall of Supreme Harmony, Luo Qingqian's brows twitched slightly and her forehead creased slightly. Sure enough, when she came to this plane, many things had changed. She vaguely remembered that in the memories of the original owner, when she had first entered the palace, she had been sent to the Shangshi Bureau and was equipped to assist the chef of the imperial kitchen. But now, she had become a palace maid of the Shang bedchamber. Somehow, he felt a little uneasy. This is where you will work in the future. Remember to speak less and do more. Be careful with your words and actions." The palace attendant glanced at her and warned her just like he had warned every palace maid before. But she still added, "Opportunities are reserved for those who are prepared." Luo Qingchen immediately understood what she meant. She narrowed her eyes and looked at her. Then, a faint smile appeared on her lips. Qingchen understands. When she finished speaking, she was stunned for a moment. In the memories of the original owner, Mu Hanch had always told her that his name was Little Chun. But on the value panel of the bronze mirror, the 3 words Luo Qingchen were indeed written. Could it be that it was because this name was related to the original owner's identity that Mu Hanch had deliberately concealed it? She felt a ding sound in her head, and a light bulb lit up. Chapter 1826. Host, can you be a bit more normal? This is an A-ranked mission. All right, sorry to disturb you. The first few days of entering the palace had been very dull because she hadn't even seen Nan Yixing's face. Every day, she would go through basic training with the new palace maids and occasionally come back to see everyone. Every time, her eyes would unconsciously fall on Luo Qingchen. She always felt that there was something in her eyes that she couldn't explain. Luo Qingchen felt very good staying with these palace maids for a few days. Most of them were born poor, but they had good looks. Some of them were even better than the harem girls. But their fates were as different as heaven and earth. Did you hear? Prince Nan is going to find a wife and concubine for the crown prince. Qiu Ju pretended to be disappointed. I really envy those people with high status. That's right, that's right. His Highness the Crown Prince is very gentle, completely different from the third prince. Qiu, are you crazy? You dare to talk about His Highness. You really don't want your head anymore. Dong. Pursed her lips and looked at Luo Qingchen. Little Chun, am I right? Because the previous host didn't know that she was called Luo Qingchen, she still used Little Chun to communicate with everyone. Luo Qingchen put her index finger to her lips and looked at Qiu Ju. You really can't say these things. All right, Qiu Ju said with a bit of grievance. I won't say such things in the future. That night, Luo Qingchen didn't sleep at all. Her mind was filled with thoughts, and she felt that the mission was a bit stagnant. It seemed like she had fallen into the same predicament as the previous host and couldn't get close to Nan Yixing. Could it be that she would also be seriously injured for him? But she was a bit afraid of pain. Because Luo Qingchen had been thinking about this problem the entire night, she was a bit muddle-headed the next day. But when she arrived at the heavenly prayer hall with a group of palace maids, she felt as though she had been jolted awake. What came into view was a huge shrine. Inside the shrine, there were 4 crystal-like pearls that rose from the ground. The pearls were suffused with a cold white light. In the center of the pearls was a huge 5 elements, 8 trigrams array. Because of her lowly status, Luo Qingchen, as a palace maid, stood far away. But even from such a distance, she was still amazed. What is this? Qiu Ju, who was always talkative, asked softly. Little did she know that Qiao Shanggong was glaring at her fiercely. Qiu Ju was so scared that her face turned pale and she almost fainted. In fact, even Luo Qingchen was startled by Qiao Shanggong's glare. She couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Today is the Crown Prince's consort selection ceremony. Our Nanzhao kingdom has always been on good terms with the Wu people of Snow Sky Peak, so we must obtain the heavenly spirit flower array's blessing in order to become the Crown Prince's official consort. After saying this, the Nanzhao king knelt heavily on the ground, and the group of people followed suit. Luo Qingchen narrowed her eyes and kept looking for Nan Yixing's position. Finally, she found him in a conspicuous position. He was wearing a moon-white robe that fluttered in the wind. His face was as calm as water, as if he had seen through the world. Let us welcome the Wu people's spirit girl, Aunt Luo Xian. Then came the voice of a eunuch. Then the people on both sides opened up a path. A woman wearing a light blue dress with a crescent moon and phoenix tail slowly walked up. Chapter 1827. Luo Xian's hands were crossed, forming the shape of a lotus. Transparent butterflies circled around her wrists. Whirlpools began to appear in the sacred water lake in the center of the heavenly prayer hall. This scene was like a waterfall flowing through the sky. It was truly a spectacular sight. Replying to Nan Wang, the crown prince's destined princess consort is in the hall. However, because our Wu clan lost our holy maiden 7 years ago, the astrolabe is very unstable. We cannot accurately calculate who the princess consort is. Luo Exen lowered her head guiltily. I hope Nan Wang will not blame me. Aunt, what are you saying? Nan Wang looked at her with grateful eyes. Aunt has already brought enough fortune-telling. As his voice fell, he looked at all the noble harem girls entering the palace today. Pass down my decree. All the harem girls will enter the starry hall tonight for His Highness the Crown Prince to choose. Nan Yixing's gaze was indifferent from beginning to end. No clues could be seen. Just as he was about to turn around, he seemed to sense something. His inky eyes looked towards Luo Qingqian's direction. In that instant, his eyes met hers. Suddenly, she felt her chest beat violently. There was a special feeling of nervousness. It was as if she had been silently watching a certain youth. Then when he looked back, he happened to look into her eyes. At this moment, Luo Qingqian was feeling this. Nan Yixing's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly. He looked in Luo Qingqian's direction for a long time. It wasn't until he was alone that he had no choice but to withdraw his gaze. Why was that palace maid's gaze so familiar? It was as if he could see through her eyes. There was a palpitating feeling in his heart. He had never felt this way since he was born. He always felt that those eyes were like a strong light that passed through time and space, shining into his life. Without any warning, Luo Qingqian stood in a daze for a long time before coming back to her senses. Dong hurriedly pulled her hand. What are you looking at? We should go. And she nodded. Where's Qiujiu? He was called away by the imperial palace. Dong frowned and said, I don't know if he'll be punished. She did misspeak just now. Luo Qingqian frowned and said, Qiujiu really shouldn't have spoken in that situation just now. This girl probably didn't take what she said last night to heart. This time, he was probably going to be caned. However, what Luo Qingqian and Dong didn't expect was that Qiujiu wasn't just being beaten up, because she didn't show up until dinner time. Sister Dong used to be a palace maid. Before she entered the palace, she had left some connections for her. Luo Qingqian asked her to secretly inquire about it. If it was just a closed door, it wouldn't be a big deal. Little did they know, oh no. Dong almost sprinted into the room. She looked at Luo Qingqian and said, Qiujiu has been locked up. What do you mean by a secret prison? It said that she broke a sacred ceremony. She has to use her blood as a sacrifice to the Wu people. Dong tears fell as she spoke. She looked helplessly at Luo Qingqian and said, What do we do? Little Chen, what should we do? Luo Qingqian bit her lip when she heard this. She looked around. Other than Dong the other palace maids all silently took a step back after hearing this news. She didn't blame them. After all, the most important thing in the palace was to protect oneself. Chapter 1828. Luo Qingqian followed a small path to Nan Yixing's star palace. There was a row of harem girls standing at the door, as if they were waiting for him to receive them. System, I need a night suit. Ding, 500 exchange points has been taken. Successfully exchanged for a night suit. Why were night suits so expensive? Because the host is very strong and doesn't exchange for things in the store most of the time. The store is very empty. Goddamn. Give me 2 chocolate beans while you're at it. Ding, the kind system has given the host a pack of chocolate beans. In that moment, Luo Qingqian felt an inexplicable warmth from the system. She knew why and knew that the system was finding fun for her. After all, the last world was a special world, and the new world was very calm at the beginning. There weren't many ups and downs. After tidying up her night suit, she entered from the side door. Because of her excellent movement skills, the inner guard's perception wasn't enough to notice that she had entered the main palace. Actually, she wanted to use her beauty to have Nan Yixing help her save Qiujiu. But thinking of the 0% affection in her hand, it shouldn't be possible. So, taking him hostage was the best way to go about it. After all, in the previous host's memories, Although Nan Yisheng had an enchanting face, his strength didn't seem to be that good. Luo Qingshan stood behind the curtain. She gently picked up a pebble from the basin and threw it in the direction of the candlestick. In that instant, the entire room was taken down. Nan Yisheng raised his eyebrows, and a sharp light flashed through his eyes. The corners of his mouth curved into a faint smile. After that, Luo Qingshan quickly moved to his side. She picked up the knife on the table and placed it on Nan Yisheng's neck as she said, "Don't move." The other party was stunned for a moment, and a faint light flashed in his eyes. Just as he was about to speak, his thin lips were instantly stuffed with a round chocolate bean. "Help me save someone, and I'll give you the antidote." Luo Qingshan's goal was very clear since Qiuju didn't have much time left. The next second, Nan Yisheng lowered his eyes and looked at her snow-white hand. "You're holding the knife upside down." When Luo Qingshan heard this, she was stunned for a moment and quickly turned the knife around. Gritting her teeth, she said, "Don't talk nonsense. This poison is very magical. It will pass through your blood and directly reach your heart." "Your Highness, did something happen?" When the eunuch standing at the door saw that the main hall had darkened, he raised his head and asked, "Do you need this servant to light the lamp for you?" "No need." Nan Yisheng's cold voice rang out slowly, echoing throughout the hall. In an instant, he glanced sideways at Luo Qingshan and said, "But you still haven't told me what you want me to do." "Ahem." Luo Qingshan cleared her throat and said, "Help me save a palace maid." A palace maid?" This time, Nan Yisheng, who was originally indifferent, revealed a surprised expression. After all, she had tried so hard to hold him hostage just for a palace maid. Nan Yisheng's eyebrows twitched as he followed Luo Qingshan to the secret prison through the back door. Because they were walking on a small path and it was already late, no one noticed them. When they arrived at the secret prison and Dong, saw Nan Yisheng, she was completely stunned. You really? She was a little speechless. She wanted to say something, but couldn't. Chapter 1829. That's reasonable. Luo Qingshan seriously nodded at Nan Yisheng. He didn't know why, but when he saw her dressed in black and her clear eyes trembling slightly, he felt an inexplicable throbbing. Ding! Affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 10%. Suddenly thinking of the affection, Luo Qingshan had a new level of respect for Nan Yisheng. His personality was elegant on the outside, but his heart was as hot as fire. Otherwise, how could he have affection for an assassin? Luo Qingshan had just finished speaking and hadn't come back to her senses when Nan Yisheng had already walked into the prison. The two guards instantly bowed. "Greetings to your Highness." He nodded, returning to his usual calm as water self as he looked at the guards. "Tell the Tiao Shanggong to let that girl go." The two looked at each other before bowing. "Yes." As soon as his voice fell, Nan Yisheng turned to look at Luo Qingshan and Dong. "You two go stand to the side first. The Tiao Shanggong can be a very vengeful person." His voice was very calm, but there was a faint trace of concern in it. Without knowing why, Luo Qingshan liked this feeling very much, very much. After a while, the Tiao Shanggong came out of the prison, followed by two maids who had already fainted and had a pale face. She looked at Nan Yisheng and gave a palace bow. There was a strange look that flashed in her eyes as she said, "Your Highness must have been entrusted by someone, right?" "Whether I was entrusted by someone or not, it's not up to you to ask." Nan Yisheng gave a soft laugh. His tone wasn't very serious when he said this, but the Tiao Shanggong couldn't help trembling. She quickly kneeled down and said, "This servant doesn't dare. This girl, your Highness, please be assured, her life isn't in danger for now." The Tiao Shanggong immediately responded, afraid of angering Nan Yisheng again. She knew better than anyone that the crown prince wasn't a weak person who would be bullied by his brothers. He was just hiding his edge. 2 hours later, Qiuju woke up in the palace maid's quarters. Although she was still very weak, Luo Qingshan checked her pulse and confirmed that her life was not in danger. It was probably due to excessive blood loss that caused a temporary coma. Let's see if you still dare to spout nonsense in the future." Dong didn't forget to nag at her as she fed her the medicine. When Xiuju heard this, tears fell from her eyes in her sleep. His voice was weak and hoarse as he said, I won't dare. I won't dare in the future. Luo Qingshun didn't blame her. After all, Xiuju had tasted the bitterness this time. She probably wouldn't dare to do it again in the future. In the end, Nan Yixing still didn't say anything about her kidnapping him tonight. He didn't even care about the chocolate beans she gave him. At the same time, in the Stellar Hall, the eunuch in charge lit a lamp and said, His Highness seems to be in a good mood today. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the dagger on the table. The scene of them parting just now appeared in his mind. I've already had the mama send the person you wanted back to the palace maid's quarters. If Miss Assassin doesn't have any other orders, I'll go back first. His deep eyes flashed with a faint light, and the corners of his mouth curved into a faint smile as he looked at her clear eyes. In the next second, her right hand suddenly grabbed his left hand and placed the dagger in his palm. Very good. You've worked hard. Chapter 1830. She felt that her fair cheeks were slightly flushed, and her calm heart was beating wildly like a little deer. He looked at her running figure, and his heart suddenly bloomed. There's a person called Xiao Chun in the palace maid district. Nan Yixing gently rested his chin on his right hand, and a faint liguang flashed through his eyes. Announce her to the Starry Hall tomorrow. The eunuch in charge was stunned for a moment, and then said, yes. Early the next morning, the palace maid district's people had just woken up when Minister Taitung came in. Everyone panicked and saluted. Cough, cough. Minister Taitung cleared her throat and looked at them. Although you've just entered the palace, you haven't been assigned a room yet. But as you all know, His Highness the Crown Prince is choosing a concubine recently, and the Starry Hall is understaffed. I want to go. One of the little girls raised her hand happily, but was fiercely glared back at by Minister Taitung. At this moment, she shut her mouth and lowered her head, not daring to say a word. Minister Taitung was her aunt, but she didn't show any favoritism. She entered the palace to become a palace maid just to see His Highness the Crown Prince's face, but she didn't even have the chance to go to the Starry Hall. From today onwards, Qiuju, Dong, and Xiao Chun will go to the Starry Hall to work. There will naturally be someone there to tell you what to do. Luo Qingshun and Dong looked at each other and roughly understood why they were suddenly transferred to the Starry Hall. It seemed that last night's matter wasn't over yet. The three of them were silent on the way to the Starry Hall. As the instigator, Luo Qingshun felt that last night's temporary uprising was completely a bad idea. It was probably because she and he had also experienced 30 planes and was completely relying on him as the male lead to come up with such a plan. In fact, she was also gambling. After all, the situation was so urgent that she could only gamble. Gambling on a chance to ruin a lifetime. This gamble seemed to have succeeded, but also seemed not to have succeeded. Xiao Chun, do you think it's a blessing or a curse for us to go to the Starry Hall? Xiuju blinked her eyes and blinked again. Then she looked at Luo Qingshun and said, Tell me, how could you hold the crown prince hostage yesterday? This is a capital crime punishable by death. In the next second, Luo Qingshun and Dong covered Xiuju's mouth at the same time. Even if you don't speak, no one will think you're mute. Luo Qingshun looked at her worriedly, indicating that this person really couldn't be taught. Yesterday's matter of life and death was completely thrown to the back of his mind after one night. Xiuju immediately made a gesture of sealing her mouth, indicating that from now on, she would not say a single word of nonsense. The journey from the Palace Maid Market to the Star Palace Hall was not far, but on the way, they would pass by the side halls of the harem girls. Luo Qingshun did not forget to take a few glances. There really were quite a few exceptionally beautiful girls. But yesterday, Nan Yixing didn't seem to let any of the beauties into the Starry Hall. When they arrived outside the Star Palace Hall, the eunuch in charge looked at the three of them and said, Who is Miss Xiao Chun? Come with this old servant. Luo Qingshun frowned slightly. Sure enough, Nan Yixing recognized her last night. It seemed that the assassin disguise was completely deceiving oneself. System, I want to return it. Sorry, The store does not accept returned items because they are contaminated with popularity. Bao Bao is a god. The moment she walked into the main hall, she took a deep breath. She had already thought of a way to deal with it. She decided. Chapter 1831. Your Highness, she's here. You can leave. When the doors to the Star Palace slowly closed, Luo Qingshun finally looked up. Nan Yisheng was sitting on the throne, looking down as if he was writing something. His slender fingers were holding the brush, looking very elegant. Miss Assassin, did you forget something? He slightly looked up, a faint liguang flashing in his deep eyes as he looked at her with a deep meaning. Luo Qingshun's heart skipped a beat when she heard this. She said, "What is your Highness talking about?" This servant doesn't understand. Other than pretending she didn't know, she couldn't find a better way to absolve herself. After all, she still didn't understand what this crown prince wanted to do. After a while, he slowly stood up, crossing his hands as he looked at Luo Qingshun. His lips curled as he said, "Your eyes are very beautiful." When he saw her at the ceremony yesterday, he felt that her eyes were very beautiful. They were like stars in the dark night, glowing like night pearls. Therefore, even though she had snuck into his palace in black last night, he had recognized her at a glance. "Thank your Highness for your praise." Luo Qingshun pursed her lips and said, "But this servant doesn't understand your Highness' serious meaning. My meaning is, you forgot to give me the antidote." He narrowed his eyes as a trace of gentleness appeared on his calm as water face. "Oh, that's right." Luo Qingshun immediately corrected herself. "Did I say something wrong? I have to say, Miss Assassin, your taste for poison is very special." He softly walked forward and bent down in front of her. "If you don't plan on giving me the antidote, you can give me another poison." When Nan Yisheng said this, Luo Qingshun was stunned, and he was also stunned. He was stunned by his own words. He never thought that he would say something like this, something that would tug at someone's heartstrings. Ding! Affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 20%. For Luo Qingshun, Nan Yisheng's words were something that she never expected. It seemed like his personality was the same as what she had imagined. On the surface, he and his heart were two different worlds. In an instant, Luo Qingshun took out a chocolate bean from her pocket and stuffed it into his mouth. "This is the antidote. I hope that your Highness the Crown Prince will forgive this servant for the sake of the poison and the antidote." Actually, when she said this to him, there was a hint of coquettishness in her tone. After all, he had the system. After all, there was a notification sound. After all, there was the favorability. Luo Qingshun knew very well that he would not harm her. At the beginning of the plane, when she first started doing missions and only had 20% favorability, she would be inexplicably flustered. But now, she was so arrogant that she could swell up. Although she knew that this was wrong, her current state was probably because she was spoiled. "I don't understand why the antidote and poison taste so similar." Nan Yisheng looked at her somewhat flustered eyes, and he couldn't help feeling very happy. This kind of happiness made all the blood in his body boil as it flowed into his heart. That. After 3 seconds, Luo Qingshun immediately forced out an excuse. She looked at him and said, "Everything in the world exists together. Poison and antidote belong together, so it's normal for the taste to be the same." Chapter 1832. Nan Yisheng nodded seriously. Looking at her face, he said, "That makes sense. Then, can I go back to the Palace Maid Square?" Luo Qingshun blinked and asked where she was going. Although the Shanggong told her to go to the Starry Hall to work, she knew what was going on. After all, holding the Crown Prince hostage was a big deal. She couldn't drag Qiuju and Dong into the water. "You can live in a side hall for now. I'll arrange the specific sleeping quarters." Nan Yisheng turned around. His eyes as deep as the sea flashed with a faint light. He knew very well that he was very happy. Luo Qingshun's clear eyes trembled. She didn't understand. Did Nan Yisheng want her to serve those harem girls who hadn't married yet? "Damn, I don't want to, okay?" Luo Qingshun sighed softly and walked out of the hall dejectedly. Sure enough, 20% favorability was trash. She even bribed him with 2 chocolate beans. As soon as she walked out of the palace gate, Chiuju and Dong rushed up and winked, wanting to ask something. But when they saw the manager eunuch behind them, they immediately closed their mouths. The side hall of the Starry Hall was a certain distance from the main hall, although it was much closer than the palace maid square. Luo Qingshan was dressed in a palace maid uniform. When she entered the side hall, she naturally didn't receive the attention of the harem girls. It wasn't until the manager eunuch specially arranged a room for her that she received disdainful looks from all directions. One of the girls, called Lan Yuding, spoke first. Her tone was very sharp and full of disdain. "Oh, eunuch, I have a question that I don't quite understand. Can I ask you?" She crossed her arms in front of her chest, looked up, and held her head high. She had the aura of a princess consort. Looking at her really made people unhappy. The manager eunuch had been in the palace for many years. He naturally knew how to read people's expressions. He also knew the meaning of Lan Yuding's words. But in the palace, it was important to see through many things and not speak them out. Moreover, he had been by the crown prince's side for many years. Even if he couldn't completely guess his intentions, he could guess most of them. Although little Chun was only a palace maid, she was not important to His Highness, but she must be very special. This was because in all these years, he had never summoned a palace maid from the palace maid workshop into the Starry Hall. Just based on this point alone, it was something that many of the harem girls here could not reach. "Miss Lan, please speak." The in-charge lowered his eyes and replied respectfully. "Ahem." Lan Yuding cleared her throat and said, "This place should be the crown prince's side palace. It's normal for palace maids to come in and serve us, but it's not good to let palace maids live here." Lan Yuding's voice was very sarcastic, but because she was the daughter of the imperial censor in the palace, she was a notch nobler than many of the harem girls. Naturally, her words were very arrogant. Just this sharp sound made it hard for Luo Qingshan to take. This is not something this old servant can decide. The manager eunuch bowed and said, "Everything is arranged by His Highness. Miss Lan, please don't take it to heart. These 3 palace maids will probably live in the side palace for a few days. They won't stay for long." This sentence was said to him by Nan Yixing. Although the meaning in it was a bit deep, he seemed to be able to understand it. But even though the manager eunuch said so, Lan Yuding still didn't give up. Chapter 1833. When Luo Qingshan heard this, she narrowed her eyes and looked Lan Yuding up and down. She was dressed in an ivory-white patterned gauze and held a peony gauze fan in her hand. She looked especially noble. Her every movement gave off the feeling that she was already the mother of the world. It was probably because she was young and impetuous that she didn't understand that the most taboo thing in the harem was to suppress the crowd, especially when you're just a harem girl without any rank or status. "You mean that the maids of the palace will dirty your place?" Luo Qingshan gave a shrug, not revealing a trace of fear in her eyes. But Chiuju and Dong, who were standing next to her, lowered their heads and angrily pulled on her sleeve. Lan Yuding's expression was a bit ugly. She glared and gritted her teeth. "Of course. What's my status? What is your status?" When her voice fell, she turned her eyes and looked at the manager eunuch with the aura of a master and said, "Eunuch should know whose daughter I am. We're a large group of harem girls. There is no way we can live in the same place as the servants." The manager eunuch's expression was clearly a bit awkward. He wanted to say something, but Luo Qingshan had already responded. "But I don't feel that you're dressed like a noble." She nodded slightly and looked Lan Yuding up and down. A trace of coldness flashed through her clear eyes. "But you look a bit similar to the proprietress of the easternmost fragrant courtyard." Although one should be cautious in speaking and acting in the palace, this sentence was meant to warn Dongju, not her. In her eyes, she would never be afraid of anything that could be done directly. "You're courting death." In the next second, Lan Yuding angrily rushed forward. She suddenly raised her right hand and slapped down. Luo Qingshan sneered. With a dong sound, she firmly focused on her wrist. "You dare to touch me?" Lan Yuding was about to raise her foot to kick her when Luo Qingshan suddenly pushed her wrist. She staggered back and fell to the ground. Without saying a word, She gave the maidservant beside her a look. The maidservant immediately understood and headed towards the Golden Palace to call for reinforcements. Luo Qingxun probably saw it, but she didn't stop it. This was because she was already very unhappy to be asked to dress up as a female supporting character. Yet this female supporting character was especially pretentious. If she wasn't willing to serve him, she would be arrogant. Host, you could do anything as you please now. I was so aggrieved in the previous plane. Can't I be impudent for a while? Yes, yes, of course. Little did they know, Lan Yuding thought that if she fell to the ground, there would be a group of people trying to curry favor with her to help her up. However, it seemed that not a single person stepped forward. They could even hear the faint sounds of mockery. Most of the beauties in the side hall were people of status. Although not all of them were the daughters of high officials, they were at least the pearls of their parents. Lan Yuding relied on the fact that she was the daughter of the imperial censor, and her words were always full of harshness. Although the time they spent together was very short, there were many people who disliked her. Hey, why aren't you guys coming over to help this young miss up? Her voice was full of anger, and her cheeks were red. It was obvious at a glance that she was very angry with Luo Qingxun. The two women standing at the very front looked at each other. Because Lan Yuding was the daughter of the imperial censor, they still went forward to help her up. Chapter 1834. The girl in the pink dress who had helped her up was clearly aggrieved. She bit her lips and said, "Didn't the steward say it already? The palace maid will only stay for 2 days. Why are you so unforgiving?" Slap. As soon as she finished speaking, Lan Yuding's slap landed on her cheek. One had to know that she had used all of her strength to deliver this slap. She vented all her anger from being bullied by Luo Qingxun on this girl. The girl in the pink dress was directly knocked to the ground. Blood oozed out of her mouth, and her face immediately turned pale. She didn't even have the strength to stand up. At this time, Lan Yuding's personal maid led the imperial censor in. The imperial censor didn't notice the person on the ground at all. He directly ran towards Lan Yuding and asked with concern, "What happened to my precious daughter? You've only been in the palace for a few days. What grievances have you suffered?" Looking at the imperial censor's deeply doting face, Luo Qingxun could roughly understand how Lan Yuding's self-centered character was formed. Father, little did she know that when Lan Yuding saw the imperial censor, all traces of her previous anger disappeared. She had a delicate and pitiful appearance, and tears fell down in an instant. Don't cry, I am my little darling." The imperial censor patted her head and said in a strict tone, "Whoever dares to bully your father will have to bear the consequences." In the next second, Lan Yuding stretched out her arm and pointed directly at Luo Qingxun. "This lowly palace maid bullied me. She even pushed me just now." As soon as her voice fell, she didn't forget to add a proud expression to her tear-stained face. This expression seemed to be telling Luo Qingxun, "You're in big trouble." But Luo Qingxun's eyes didn't have the slightest bit of panic. She even wanted to laugh a little. The imperial censor turned around and glared at Luo Qingxun with his eyes wide open. He said angrily, "Insolent servant, you actually dared to offend your superiors. Didn't the imperial censor teach you that you must completely obey your master's orders since you enter the palace?" It had to be said that this imperial censor was indeed someone who had been in the palace for many years. When she spoke, she even knew how to frame him, unlike Lan Yuding, whose entire sentence was completely illogical. Cough, cough. In the next second, Luo Qingxun cleared her throat and said, "First, this person dressed like a brothel keeper isn't my master. Second, I'm a forgetful person. I've forgotten everything that Shang Gong taught me. What's going on? Come on." It was a head-on clash. If it wasn't for the heart-wrenching experience in the previous plane, she could probably still respect the rules of the plane. But now, she wasn't willing. For example, extreme joy begets sorrow, and extreme sorrow begets joy. The censor didn't expect Luo Qingxun to be so arrogant. She walked up to Lan Yuding, trying to replicate the action that Lan Yuding had just used on her. He rolled up his sleeves and glared at Luo Qingxun. "You're simply courting death. Not only the action, Even the words are the same. Luo Qingqian shrugged and smiled faintly with disdain. Just as she was about to slowly raise her hand and grab his wrist again, a pair of slender fingers firmly grasped the Imperial Censor's dark wrist. Chapter 1835. Luo Qingqian froze for a moment. Turning her eyes, she saw a face she couldn't be more familiar with. This time, the male lead was really good-looking. That kind of evildoer with a touch of indifference. But his eyes were inexplicably hot. Very special, very special. Although she was still a bit angry about being transferred to the side hall, since Nan Yixing came, it proved that not only did he send the manager eunuch, but he also secretly sent someone to follow her. She looked sideways at his profile, wanted to say something, but he leaned over and whispered in her ear, "Miss Assassin really has a personality, really makes people worry." Hiss! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air because of Nan Yixing's actions. Everyone in the Nanzhao Kingdom knew that the crown prince of the Nanzhao Kingdom had a face that could charm thousands of young girls in the world. His temperament was as calm as water, not gentle, but he was a man that would make people fall in love with him. And this kind of man had never had a woman by his side, whether it was a concubine or a concubine, not a single one. However, at this moment, he was leaning over a palace maid, whispering in her ear. This kind of scene was really unbelievable. The manager eunuch who was standing at the side heaved a sigh of relief. There were beads of sweat on his forehead, and his heart was still thumping nonstop. Although she probably knew that this palace maid called Xiao Chun had a special position in the crown prince's heart, but what she said to the imperial censor was really too arrogant. But now it seemed that her arrogance was justified, because the crown prince was completely on her side. No one dared to speak. Only the imperial censor slowly opened his mouth and said, "It is this old official's fault for disturbing the crown prince." But just now, this palace maid disobeyed her superiors, completely ignoring the harem of the crown prince's side hall. This old official wanted to teach her a little lesson. Hearing this, Luo Qingqian couldn't help but sneer in her heart. The people in the officialdom were indeed very good. They could turn black into white in an instant. Luo Qingqian wanted to say something back, but the imperial censor cut her off. "Actually, I don't quite understand what the censor meant by offending one's superior." Nan Yixing glanced at Luo Qingqian, giving her a warm and reassuring look. The moment she received such a gaze, her face unconsciously blushed a little. It's natural for a palace maid to offend a beauty. The censor didn't quite understand, but he didn't dare to be too confident in front of Nan Yixing. Even though what he said made sense, he put his hands in front of his chest and lowered his head as he said resentfully. She didn't know that in the next second, Nan Yixing's eyebrows moved slightly and the corners of his mouth curved into an extremely faint smile. When did I say she was a palace maid? He originally wanted to place her in the side chamber for a few days and wait for the Stellar Hall's inner hall to be repaired before taking her over in the name of the crown prince. As for his identity, he hadn't decided yet. In fact, he wasn't completely sure what this girl in front of him meant to him. He just felt that she was very special. He would consciously or unconsciously think of her and would constantly want to get closer to her. Although she was only a palace maid, she gave him such a dazzling feeling. No matter where she went, there was a dazzling light that took away his focus without warning. Chapter 1836. Hearing Nan Yixing's words, the censor was completely stunned. Not only her, but even Lan Yuding, who thought she had the aura of a queen, was stunned. She pouted her lips, and her princess temper came up. She looked at Nan Yixing in disbelief and said, "Your Highness, how can you protect a lowly servant instead of your own beauty?" Nan Yixing frowned slightly, and his eyes, which were like a sea of stars, suddenly became hazy. Luo Qingqian seemed to feel that the air around her was a little cold. She didn't even have to think about it to know that her male lead was angry. "My beauty," he snorted coldly, and his eyes fell on Lan Yuding for the first time. He said softly, "I really don't need it." For the first time, Luo Qingqian felt that Nan Yixing could be so cold. These simple words didn't have the slightest warmth. Lan Yuding was completely stunned. She didn't come back to her senses at all. The crown prince in front of her was the one she had always wanted to marry. This time, the Wu people finally came to tell His Majesty that she was his princess consort in the hall. She thought, no matter status or beauty, no one would dare to claim second place among this group of beauties if she dared to claim first place. But the war hadn't even started yet, and she had lost to a palace maid? Your Highness! Lan Yuding's lips were a little pale, and there were shallow tears in her eyes. This was different from the tears just now. This time, she really felt sad in her heart. How could this be? How could the crown prince protect such a humble palace maid? From the day after tomorrow, this side hall will no longer exist. Nen Yisheng's eyes swept over the crowd, and then he said, I wanted little Chun to stay here for 2 days, but I didn't expect that someone would take the place of the host. His last sentence was very straightforward, like a slap on Lan Yuding's face. The master here should be Luo Qingchun, the palace maid, not Lan Yuding, the beauty. She was shamelessly taking the place of the host. When the girls heard this, their eyes widened and their gazes landed on Lan Yuding. In their eyes, if Lan Yuding had not been so domineering, they might not have had to leave the palace. As long as they did not leave the palace, they would still have a chance. Whether it was the crown prince or the other princes, this was the only way to become a phoenix. However, because of Lan Yuding, all of them had no way out. In the next second, a harem girl wearing a floor-length skirt with plum blossoms knelt down and said, Your Highness the Crown Prince, please forgive us. After we enter the palace, we have always scrupulously abided by our duties. No matter what, we have never crossed the line. But this Miss Lan has been overbearing time and time again. She doesn't treat us as human beings at all. Another person kneeled down and said, Big Sister Chui Air is right. I hope your Highness will not drive us out of the side chamber. Even if we have to stay in the side chamber for the rest of our lives, it doesn't matter. In an instant, all the beauties knelt down and kowtowed. We hope that your Highness the Crown Prince will grant our wish. Seeing this scene, Luo Qingchun couldn't help but smile faintly. This time, Lan Yuding could be considered a group attack. It seemed that she usually treated the other beauties with the same attitude she treated her today. Her eyes grew to the top of her head. She was really arrogant. Chapter 1837. At this moment, Lan Yuding's face was as ugly as it could get. She didn't expect that this large group of harem girls would attack her at the same time. After all, she always thought that this group of people couldn't wait to be good to her and then curry favor with her. Little did she know, Luo Qingchun didn't find it strange at all. After all, to become a harem girl, she probably didn't have much hardship in her life. Who wasn't the favorite of their parents? Suddenly being bullied by someone of the same status, she naturally felt uncomfortable. You bunch of scoundrels. Lan Yuding angrily stomped her feet and roared, It definitely won't let go of slap. Before she finished speaking, there was a crisp and sweet sound of slap in the air. 5 bright red handprints were printed on Lan Yuding's face. They came from her father, who had just desperately followed her orders. The so-called imperial censor. Father. Lan Yuding covered her face. Big drops of tears fell down her face. Her eyes were full of grievances. The imperial censor looked at her very distressed, but there was really no other way. After being an official for so many years, he naturally knew that the always gentle crown prince was really angry today. He was the future king. No matter what, he couldn't offend him. Kneel, he roared. His face was red, and the veins on his head were bulging. It could be said that he was quite angry. Lan Yuding was obviously frightened by him. She almost didn't have time to think and immediately knelt down. Since she was a child, her father had never been fierce to her. No matter what she did wrong, he couldn't even bear to scold her. But now, in front of everyone, he was so strict that she knelt down. The next second, the imperial censor knelt down by her side with a thud. He kowtowed heavily to Nan Yisheng and said, This old official didn't teach his daughter well. Please forgive me, Your Highness. Don't implicate her. This move was probably to win the hearts of the people. After all, many of the harem girls here had extraordinary family backgrounds. Now that he had offended the crown prince, he couldn't offend anyone else. Nan Yixing narrowed his eyes from beginning to end. His white and handsome cheeks looked indifferent, without any emotional fluctuations. Luo Qingshun stood by his side with her hands behind her back. It was like she was watching a play. He looked over from time to time. When he inadvertently saw her clear as water eyes, his heart couldn't help being stunned. Could it be that beauty was in the eye of the beholder? He felt. Her side profile was very beautiful. Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 30%. When the system's voice, Luo Qingshun's assess, Luo Qingshun's assess. It was at S's. I don't care how long this hall stays. Nan Yisheng paused before looking at Luo Qingshun with a gentle gaze. You can ask the girl beside me if she's willing or not. That's right. Teet. Everyone's eyes fell onto Luo Qingshun. Countless gazes converged at this moment. Nan Yixing had completely pushed her to the highest point of the limelight. Everything seemed to have a dramatic reversal. A palace maid was deciding whether the harem girls would stay or leave. Chapter 1838. When Lan Yuding heard Nan Yixing's words, she stood there in a daze. She didn't recover for a long time. She couldn't understand why she had lost like this, and lost so miserably. At this moment, she was like a jumping clown, allowing everyone to watch. Her cheeks burned with pain, and her heart was filled with hatred for the palace made in front of her. Withdrawing her admiring gaze, Luo Qingshun cleared her throat and looked at the girls. If you want my opinion, I don't care if you want to stay or leave. She pursed her lips, a faint smile on her lips. After speaking, she didn't forget to look at Nan Yixing. There was a faint light in his deep eyes, and when his gaze fell on her body, there was only a sense of exploration. Although his words and actions were very special to her, no matter what, he only had a 30% favorable impression of her. If Luo Qingshun didn't find it strange at all, it must be that she was blinded by love. After the matter in the side hall was settled, Luo Qingshun was directly taken back to Star Palace by Nan Yixing. This back and forth had attracted countless hatred for her, but she didn't gain anything at all. From today onwards, you will temporarily live here. Nan Yixing looked at her clear eyes and said, the two girls will be responsible for taking care of you. His gaze was soft, with a light that couldn't be seen clearly. Luo Qingshun nodded slightly. Looking at him, she asked, Your Highness, are you hiding a mistress in a golden house? She felt that the atmosphere was inexplicably awkward, and teasing him could probably alleviate this strange feeling. Nan Yisheng's eyebrows moved slightly, and the corners of his mouth rose slightly. No need to hide. I have already thought of the position of the princess consort. Although the person in front of her was the man who had gone through fire and water with her countless times, when he said these words in a new time and space, it still made her heart tremble. Me? Who else could it be? Nan Yixing raised his hand slightly, and his slightly cold fingertips touched her little dimples. Luo Qingshun's eyebrows trembled slightly. She was so nervous that her eyes kept trembling. Originally, she thought that by teasing the male lead, she would be able to alleviate the inexplicably ambiguous and awkward atmosphere. Little did she know that his gentle touch would actually cause her to unconsciously panic. The golden light shone through the window onto their faces. At this moment, they looked so compatible. But will Princeton agree? Luo Qingshun raised her clear eyes and said, After all, his status, based on what little Chan said in the side chamber just now, he didn't seem like someone who cared about his identity. He raised his sword-like eyes without the slightest bit of worry in them. This kind of feeling was somewhat different from the script that had been written in the palace since ancient times. Generally speaking, shouldn't the king's first wife for the crown prince be of equal social status? Seeing the doubt in Luo Qingshun's eyes, Nan Yixing gently patted her head and said, Don't worry. The crown prince of the Nanzhao kingdom has the right to choose his wife. Why? Luo Qingshun blinked her clear eyes and said, This kind of situation in other countries, it should be very rare. Luo Qingshun was shocked by her own almost quick mouth. After all, the relationship between the Mu kingdom and the Nanzhao kingdom was not as friendly as imagined. It It was better not to expose this kind of thing for the time being. Chapter 1839. It had to be said that Nan Yisheng was very different from what she saw on the surface. She felt that those flirtatious words coming out of his mouth were both elegant and enjoyable. She had to admit that she was very happy to enter the Starry Palace. Qiuju and Dong only regained their senses after following her into the side hall of the Stellar Hall. Their two little faces were filled with extreme excitement as they looked at her and said, "Little Chun, little Chun, little Chun, you've really become a phoenix this time. Wow, I'm so envious. But I'm very happy for you." Luo Qingchun held her cheek with one hand and knocked on the table with the other. She narrowed her eyes thoughtfully. Does the Nanzhao kingdom worship the Wu people? Qiuju and Dong looked at each other and then looked at Luo Qingchun with confusion. Isn't little Chun from the Nanzhao kingdom? Oh, Luo Qingchun thought for a moment, and then her eyes moved slightly. She began her long fantasy play. She looked at them and said, "You can't say that. I was born in the Nanzhao kingdom. Later, because my family was poor, I was always wandering around." She sighed as she spoke to create the atmosphere of the story. "Oh, so that's how it is." Donger comforted her with a worried expression. "Little Chun is so pitiful. Although my family was poor, at least I had a thatched hut and a place to stay. At least I wasn't always outside. My family wasn't poor. Later, my father was addicted to gambling and lost everything. In the end, he even lost me." Qiuju's face didn't seem to have recovered. She was a bit pale from a day of running around. But when she told her story, she became spirited. As expected, Qiuju is an optimist. Luo Qingchun's eyes moved slightly. She changed the topic back to what she wanted to know. She pursed her lips and asked, "So Prince Nan and His Highness both believe the Wu people's words without a doubt?" "Of course. The Wu people are the sky of the Nanzhao kingdom." Qiuju looked at Luo Qingchun and explained, "Aunt Luo Xn is not the saintess of the Wu people. If she was, even Prince Nan would have to kowtow to her." Seeing that Qiuju's voice was a little loud, Dong hurriedly patted her head as a warning. "Do you want to be caned again?" Qiuju hurriedly stuck out her tongue and raised her hands in surrender. I'm sorry. It's all my fault." She made the gesture of sealing her mouth while talking. Luo Qingchun shook her head to show that she seemed a bit familiar with this gesture. That's right. You'd better stop talking. Let me do it." Donger made a pot of tea for them and slowly told the story of the Nanzhao kingdom and the Wu people. 400 years ago, the princess of the Nanzhao king was the holy maiden of the Wu people. At that time, the Wu people strictly forbade the holy maiden and the people of the floating dust tribe from being together and forcibly separated them. What they didn't know was that the holy maiden wanted to run away with the king that night and angered the heavenly spirit flower array of the Wu people. It caused the entire Nanzhao kingdom to be filled with sand and fall into an apocalyptic darkness. From that night on, the Nanzhao kingdom never saw daylight again. The wind and sand kept blowing and drowned the Nanzhao kingdom under the yellow sand. The entire Nanzhao kingdom was desolate. The holy maiden couldn't bear to see this and decided to leave the king. She returned to the sky's snow peak alone and used a secret technique to calm the heavenly spirit flower array. After that night, the Nanzhao kingdom was no longer ravaged by the wind and sand. Everything returned to peace. Chapter 1840. The Wu family knew that they had made a big mistake and caused countless people to lose their homes. In order to atone for their mistake, the Wu people rebuilt the heavenly spirit flower array on the heavenly snow peak in the palace of the Nanzhao kingdom. It was said that on that day, holy water flowed down the heavenly spirit flower array and fell into the heavenly lake. The yellow sand on the ground seemed to welcome the rising sun. It was the first time in a long time that the Nanzhao kingdom welcomed the day. The king stood in front of the heavenly spirit flower array and seemed to have aged 30 years. The chief of the Wu people bowed deeply to him. That was the apology of the whole family. For so many innocent people who died for the saintess of the Wu people. So where did the witch race's saintess go in the end? Luo Qingchun was strangely infatuated with this story feeling that it was a very sad story. Dong shrugged and blinked her big, lively eyes as she said, "Who knows? It's a legend. Legends should have an end." Luo Qingshun couldn't help but think of the fear she felt when she saw the heavenly spirit flower array that day. The Wu people were not that simple. The end was that the Wu people and the Nanzhao kingdom had a good relationship and blessed the Nanzhao kingdom with good weather and peace. To pay tribute to the dead people who died in the wind and sand because of the Wu people's mistake. Although Donger explained, Luo Qingshun still didn't understand many things. For example, where did the saintess go? For example, why did the heavenly spirit flower array cause such a disaster? But she felt that even if she kept asking, Donger wouldn't give her an answer. After weighing the pros and cons, she washed her face and went to bed. She had to admit that the quilt in Nan Yixing's palace was very comfortable. She felt like she could sleep until the end of time. Or maybe she was a little tired these 2 days. The next morning, Qiujiu and Donger, who were both palace maids, helped her wash up. She was not used to the sudden change in status. "Go to your work." "I'll do it myself." "I'll do it." "No need. I'll do it myself. It's right for a servant to serve a master." Qiujiu's mouth looked like it was sprinkled with honey as she looked at her and said, "What's more, it's a master who is so beautiful and has special protection." Luo Qingshun fell into thought when she heard this. It seemed like her personality had been completely exposed and wasn't hidden at all. For example, she was a very protective person. She had officially moved into the Starry Hall. Although she hadn't been conferred a title yet, other than Qiujiu and Dong, everyone else was present. Qiujiu and another 4 palace maids and a nanny came in. Each of the palace maids was holding a big box in their hands. It was golden and shiny, and one could tell at a glance that the things inside were valuable. The palace maids and grannies in front of him were dressed differently from Qiujiu and Donger. It was obvious that the palace maids were of a much higher rank than them. Luo Qingshun and Luo Qingshun. Luo, 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 Luo. Luo, 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 Luo. The items in each box were different. The first box contained silk and satin. The second box contained gold and silver. The third box contained antiques, calligraphy and paintings, and the fourth box contained gold ingots. Chapter 1841. She had always thought that Nan Yixing was a very gentle and elegant person. She hadn't expected him to be so domineering. It was the first time Qiujiu and Dong had seen such a scene in their lives. They were a bit frightened. They couldn't help but rub their eyes and swallow their saliva at the sight of the box full of gold and silver, as well as the glittering gold. Luo Qingshun could understand why they wiped their eyes. But why did they swallow their saliva? Did gold taste good? Yes, I know. She nodded calmly. There was a faint light in her clear eyes as she asked, "Where did His Highness go?" His Highness told this servant to tell Miss Chun that he went to Prince Nan's golden palace. "Yes, you can leave first." "Yes." When the door was closed, Qiujiu and Dong excitedly shouted, "Yeah, when do we have to call you Her Highness?" "What Her Highness?" "She's the crown princess, the future princess consort." Luo Qingshun narrowed her eyes and put her hands on her hips as she looked at them. "When I become the crown princess, the first order will be to lock you two in the secret prison." Don't. Crown princess consort, please don't be angry. Qiujiu doesn't dare. Future princess consort, please don't be angry, Kacha. At this moment, the door to the side hall was opened. Luo Qingshun only felt her heart skip a beat. Her cheeks turned red and quickly spread to her ears. She turned her eyes and wanted to give Qiujiu and Dong a fierce glare. Little did she know that they had quickly retreated to the side, lowering their heads and not daring to look at her. She habitually raised her right hand to touch her ear. Standing there, she asked herself 2 questions. Was everyone talking very loudly just now? Nan Yixing had just come back. He shouldn't have heard it, right? After these 2 questions ran through her mind, Luo Qingshun felt a bit embarrassed. She smiled brightly at Nan Yixing, who slowly walked in with his hands clasped behind his back. "This servant greets Your Highness." Nan Yixing stepped forward, a faint smile on his lips. He stood in front of him and said, I'm not used to Miss Assassin being so polite all of a sudden. Is there something you need? No, Luo Qingxun replied almost instantly. She shook her head and said, What could have happened? Just now, I seem to have heard you all discussing something about the Crown Prince's consort. Nan Yisheng's beautiful eyes sparkled, and his thin lips curved into a beautiful arc. He looked at her with a gentle smile from beginning to end and said, I stood at the door for a long time. I shouldn't have misheard. Qiuju and Dong was sucked in a breath of cold air when they heard this. Then, after feeling Nan Yisheng's strong aura, they suddenly lowered their heads. They had no intention of standing up for their master. Damn, plastic friendship. Luo Qingxun couldn't help muttering in her heart. Then she cleared her throat and suddenly looked at Nan Yisheng and said, You heard right. We were discussing the Crown Prince's consort. There are so many good-looking women in the palace. Your Highness chooses. He chooses you. Before Luo Qingxun could finish her explanation, Nan Yisheng directly interrupted her. I mean, his decisive words made Luo Qingxun a bit speechless. She pursed her lips and said, Prince Nan agrees. Well, in 7 days, you will be the Crown Prince's consort. Are you ready to be the future queen? Chapter 1842. When Luo Qingxun heard this, she was completely stunned. Nan Yisheng's actions were too fast, so fast that it was completely different from the script of the ancient palace dramas. She had never thought that it would be so easy for someone of her status to become the Crown Prince's official wife. Silly girl, why are you still in a daze? His eyebrows moved slightly as he looked at Qiuju and Dong, who were standing behind her with their heads lowered. They are right. Luo Qingxun could faintly hear the two girls' laughter. She didn't know why, but her heart felt inexplicably warm. It was as if God had closed all her doors, but asked her to silently look at a window. The light coming in from the window was very cold, like a warm wind blowing into her heart. What? Luo Qingxun's clear eyes trembled. She looked away with some embarrassment and pursed her lips. I just felt that it was a bit sudden. It's not sudden. Nan Yisheng gently raised his right hand and stroked the peony between her eyebrows. It's really beautiful. Luo Qingxun touched her eyebrows in confusion. She nodded and asked, Are you talking about this? He nodded lightly. His deep eyes held an emotion that others didn't know, as if he was immersed in his own memories. Luo Qingxun thought for a moment. In the original owner's memory, the peony between her eyebrows wasn't drawn on. It seemed to be a scar left by an accident. Later, she didn't know what happened, but it became a peony mark. Because these vague memories came from before she was 7 years old, there were only some vague fragments that weren't very clear. Is it beautiful? It seems to be because of an injury when you were young. And I know. Nan Yisheng seemed to feel that he had said something wrong and hurriedly corrected himself. You should rest well these days. Tomorrow, there will be a competition between the princes. Competition? Luo Qingxun's eyebrows moved. A faint guang flashed in her eyes. He asked, You want to participate, right? Originally, there was no need for that. Nan Yisheng smiled tenderly. He gently took Luo Qingxun's hand and walked toward the soft couch in front of them. As he walked, he said, But my third brother was rather insistent, so father let me try. Luo Qingxun looked enlightened and fell into deep thought. This scene had appeared in the memories of the original owner. At that time, the original owner had blocked a sword for Nan Yisheng and suffered heavy injuries. Only then did she enter the Star Palace. But now, her status was different. She was already the future Crown Prince's wife, so she didn't need to use tricks like blocking the sword to attract Nan Yisheng's attention. How was she going to help him win the competition? In her memory, the so-called third brother, Nan Yiyong, was a particularly valiant person. Because his former mother was a child of the grassland, his character was also particularly strong. In his eyes, if he could win by force, he would be able to obtain the world. Therefore, he was quite dissatisfied with Nan Yisheng's position as the crown prince. Don't worry, His Highness will definitely win. Luo Qingxun raised her eyebrows, and a confident smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. Nan Yisheng looked at her smile, and an inexplicable warmth filled his heart. It was very warm. But how could he let her go? You just stay in the palace. My martial arts aren't good, so I will definitely lose. He looked at her clear eyes and gently tapped her nose. I don't want you to come and see me lose. Suddenly, those who had hidden their identities for so long wanted to bask in the sunlight at this moment. Because he had a tie. Chapter 1843. Although Nan Yisheng didn't allow her to go, she still went the next day. She even got up early and used the silk, satin, gold, and silver that Nan Yisheng gave her to dress herself up. After an hour of dressing up, she looked at her devastatingly beautiful face in the mirror and couldn't help but smile. Qiuju and Dong who were standing to the side and helping her tidy up her hair, couldn't stop talking. Wow, looking at little Chun now, I suddenly feel that you and His Highness are a match made in heaven. Yes, yes, a talented man and a beautiful woman, a match made in heaven. That day in the side hall, Lan Yuding used so much face powder, but still couldn't hide the dark yellow color of her skin. I think so too, and she even put on red lipstick. When you two flatter each other, it's really... Luo Qingchun shook her head and said, It gives me goosebumps all over. That's because little Chun is really good looking. Qiuju looked at her with a fangirl expression and cleared her throat. Crown Princess, are you planning to go and cheer for His Highness? This mouth of yours. Luo Qingchun raised her right hand and tapped her on the head. It's like eating honey. It had to be said that in this palace full of strangers, Qiuju and Dong had given her a lot of warmth. Sometimes, simple companionship was better than many things the martial arts arena. This was a specially built arena in the palace for the princes to spar with each other every year. Luo Qingchun wore a jade-colored whirlpool blue dress. Her hair was combed into a Luan bun, and a magpie hairpin was inserted into the top of her head. She slowly walked towards Nan Yisheng. When the breeze blew, peach blossom petals mixed with snowflakes fell to the ground. She smiled faintly at him, and he couldn't help but panic. But in the next second, he frowned with worry. He clearly told her not to come, but she still came. After all, this was a place of real swords and spears. What if the swords had no eyes, and she got hurt? At the same time, all the princes looked in the direction of Luo Qingchun. Everyone's eyes flashed with surprise. There was actually such a beautiful woman in this world, and this woman was originally just a palace maid. It was simply unbelievable. Prince Nen looked at Luo Qingchun for a few seconds and nodded with satisfaction. As expected of someone with status, regardless of whether it was her beauty or her temperament, she could outshine the crowd wherever she went. Luo Qingchun quickly glanced at them, and her eyes finally fell on Nan Yisheng's third brother, Nan Yong. He was also looking at her with an inexplicable sense of admiration. After all, everyone had a love for beauty. However, the eyes of the woman sitting beside him were filled with hatred. Luo Qingchun narrowed her eyes and remembered who this person was. Wasn't that Lan Yuding, who had argued with her in the side hall before? It seemed that she couldn't hook up with His Highness the Crown Prince, so she immediately turned around and found Nan Yong. Today, she also came with Nan Yong to participate in the annual martial arts competition of the Nanzhao Kingdom. She should be his favorite. Luo Qingchun withdrew her gaze and stood beside Nan Yisheng. She looked sideways at him and winked. Your Highness, I'm here to cheer for you. Didn't I tell you not to come? He frowned slightly, and his eyes were filled with obvious worry. His tone was gentle and somewhat helpless as he said, You're really worrisome. Since I'm going to be your crown princess, shouldn't I fight side by side with you? She pursed her lips and gently shook his sleeve with her right hand. Chapter 1844. Luo Qingchun froze for a moment. Her cold hands were instantly surrounded by his warm hands. Nan Yisheng's palms were very warm. When he held her tightly, she could feel her position in his heart. It was a kind of domineering possessiveness. No matter what happens later, you must sit on the high seat. You're not allowed to come down or run around. He said this in a very serious tone. After all, he was the crown prince. Everyone in the martial arts conference wanted to injure him or even kill him. I know. Luo Qingchun nodded obediently. With a sweet smile on her lips, she said, I will sit on the high platform obediently. I will never let you worry. So obedient? Of course. Luo Qingchen looked at him and said, It's fine as long as you look in my direction occasionally. She suddenly wanted to act coquettishly with Nan Yishan. Maybe he would be moved and her affection for him would increase. Good. He nodded and took her hand to the center. Father, this is the crown princess that I want to marry. Nan Yixing looked up and down at Luo Qingshun and then nodded with satisfaction. Very good, very good. Luo Qingshun gave a big bow. When she looked up at Nan Yixing, she was inexplicably nervous. She felt that there was an unusual emotion in his dark eyes, but she couldn't quite understand it. After the bow, Nan Yixing took Luo Qingshun's hand and sat down on the high platform. As soon as they sat down, Nan Yiyong spoke. Second brother, I heard that your martial arts have improved a lot this year. As your younger brother, I have never had a chance to compare notes with you. Nan Yiyong suddenly stood up and stretched his body. How about we compete in the first round? Nan Yixing frowned. He knew that he had no chance to refuse. He wanted to delay the fight until later and think of countermeasures. But now, his third brother didn't intend to give him a chance. He glanced sideways at Luo Qingshun, who had already started eating snacks and drinking tea. He couldn't help but smile helplessly. She was indeed a little girl. Perhaps she really thought that this was just a competition where one would stop at a certain point. However, only he knew that Nanny Young would definitely not let him off. Since third brother has said so, second brother will not refuse your kindness. Nan Yixing slowly got up and walked towards the center of the martial arts field. There are different weapons on the left and right sides. Nan Yiyong directly picked up a long sword, and a sharp light flashed in his eyes. Finally, he could share a stage with the so-called crown prince. In his eyes, this kind of useless prince was not worthy of being the crown prince. However, Prince Nan was biased. No matter how good his achievements were on the battlefield, Prince Nan had never wavered in his heart. He refused to accept this. They were not convinced at all. Now that he finally had this opportunity, he would definitely do his best. He wanted to tell Prince Nan that only those with unparalleled martial arts could rule the country and become the prince of Nanzhao Kingdom. Second brother, haven't you thought about what weapon to use? Nan Yixing stood in front of him with a long sword in his hand and a disdainful smile on his lips. In his eyes, Nan Yixing's martial arts could not be compared with his at all. What he wanted to do was to defeat him in 3 seconds and make him completely lose face. Nan Yixing raised his eyebrows slightly, and a touch of coldness appeared in his eyes. He was enduring Nan Yiyong's sarcasm. Chapter 1845. The next second, he picked up a blue long sword and looked at Nan Yiyong. Third brother, please. Nan Yiyong's mouth twitched in disdain. The long sword in his hand flew towards Nan Yixing's direction. Sitting on the high platform, Luo Qingshun couldn't help but frown. This so-called third brother really didn't intend to hold back at all. This was a move aimed at killing Nan Yixing. In an instant, Luo Qingshun's right hand gently tapped on the table. The exquisite ring on her ring finger glowed faintly with golden light. When the sword was in front of Nan Yixing's throat, she raised her eyebrows and the scene around her froze. The host is using time freeze. Luo Qingshun found that since she didn't use the exchange points, even the system's voice had changed. She lifted her long skirt and walked towards the center of the martial arts field. Snow was falling all around. Luo Qingshun stood beside Nan Yixing and didn't forget to admire his face for a few seconds. He was really good looking. Even the beautiful scenery of flying snow was slightly inferior in front of him. He was wearing a white brocade robe. His right hand was tightly holding a blue long sword. The blue veins on his slender fingertips were bulging, but his expression was still indifferent. The white snowflakes fell on his long eyelashes. It was so quiet. No wonder so many people were infatuated with Nan Yixing. He really had a magnificent face. On the other hand, Nan Yixing's face was full of stubble. His thick eyebrows were pointing upwards. He looked like a warrior. His appearance was too rough. Luo Qingshun couldn't help shaking her head. Finally, her eyes fell on the long sword. Just now, she was too far away to see clearly. She thought the sword was aimed at Nan Yixing's throat, but in fact it wasn't. It should be in the direction of his shoulder. This was indeed consistent with the memory of the original host. The reason was that when the original host blocked the sword with her body, she was injured in the direction of her shoulder. But she felt a little strange. Although Nan Yixing's appearance was a bit rough, his attack just now was indeed very fierce. As a man with good martial arts, he couldn't just stab Nan Yixing's shoulder. After all, after the space-time freeze, Luo Qingshun could see the deep killing intent in Nan Yixing's eyes. In any case, he didn't want to pretend to kill Nan Yixing by accident today. He was gambling on the position of Crown Prince, gambling on his own life. Luo Qingshun couldn't help but snort softly and murmur, "The courage of a boorish man." However, since Nan Yixing's initial goal was to kill Nan Yixing with one stab, would he temporarily deviate from the path and stab in the direction of the shoulder? Or perhaps Nan Yixing dodged it himself? Luo Qingshun frowned. She felt that it was impossible. After all, she still had the memory of the original owner. Nan Yixing had always been a man who didn't know any martial arts. He looked very calm and collected. "Host, don't let your imagination run wild. Space-time freeze is about to end." Wow, level 4 space-time freeze was that weak. Although she was complaining, her body actually started to take action. In an instant, she threw Nan Yixing's sword to the ground and pushed him down with all her strength. Then she pointed Nan Yixing's sword at Nan Yixing on the ground. Finally, she touched the corner of his mouth and slowly raised it. Then she clapped her hands and returned to her seat on the high platform. The next second, she habitually tapped the table with the fingertips of her left hand. Her right hand picked up the white wine cup and took a sip. In an instant, the exquisite ring flashed with golden light. Space-time freeze was over. At this moment, everyone let out a cry of surprise. Chapter 1846. What's going on? I just saw Prince Nin attack the Crown Prince. How come he suddenly fell to the ground? It feels like magic. It's really eye-opening. It turns out that the Crown Prince is not only elegant, but also excellent in martial arts. Whispers were fermenting in the heavy snow. Nan Yixing frowned slightly and looked at Nan Yixing, who was lying on the ground uncoordinated. "You lost." Nan Yixing was stunned for a long time and didn't come back to his senses. He didn't know he lost until the applause sounded. And he lost so inexplicably, so unreasonably. No, he gritted his teeth and said, "Let's have another round." "Yixing." Prince Nan frowned and looked at him with displeasure. Brothers should stop fighting. Since Yixing won, there's no need for a second round. "Father." Nan Yixing was obviously not reconciled, but he couldn't say anything because of Prince Nan's words. He could only glare at Nan Yixing angrily and then sit on the high seat. But at this moment, Nan Yixing's eyes flashed with a faint dark light. Just now, in that split second, he definitely didn't point his sword at Nan Yixing. He just moved sideways at an extremely fast speed, minimizing the damage to the minimum. But what was going on? He couldn't help but think of the girl who smiled sweetly at him and told him, "You will win." Did it have something to do with her? Nan Yixing returned to his seat and looked at Luo Qingshun's indifferent eyes. She wasn't surprised by the scene just now. Instead, she looked like she was watching a play. "I won," Nan Yixing said slowly. There was a faint light in his deep eyes as he looked at Luo Qingshun. She poured him a pot of hot tea and handed it to him with a smile. "I saw it. She was sure to win." Didn't he know who she was? The point was that she had to win beautifully and catch the opponent off guard. Nan Yixing took the teacup and drank it in one gulp. He put down the teacup and lifted his right hand to tuck a strand of her hair behind her ear. He said, "It's cold. Let's go back after a while." At this moment, Luo Qingshun felt that the man in front of her was particularly gentle. She was like an angel that had descended from the heavens, receiving the love of thousands of people for her entire life. Whether it was her appearance or her personality, she was perfect. It wasn't until one day that she realized that perhaps Nan Yixing wasn't an angel, but a demon filled with endless obsession. After the martial arts conference, everyone returned to the palace. Nan Yixing didn't participate in the final competition. The only winner was Nan Yong, the son of another prince. After all, Nan Yong was eliminated by Nan Yisheng in the first round. As one could well imagine, a martial artist who had lost in the martial arts competition that he was most proficient in was naturally very unconvinced. However, he did not have the opportunity to fight back. She heard that many people in Nan Yong's sleeping quarters were hungover. They smashed everything they saw and hit anyone they saw. The most miserable one was none other than the woman who had just become his new love, Lan Yuding. When Luo Qingshan saw Lan Yuding again, she almost didn't recognize her. Her whole face was completely swollen and bruised. Her originally good-looking red phoenix eyes were directly covered with black and purple bruises, which completely covered her eyes. When Lan Yuding saw her, she was no longer arrogant. Instead, she hurriedly left with her face covered. Luo Qingshan looked at her back. In ancient times, a woman's life was completely entrusted to the man she chose. Chapter 1847. On the eve of the wedding, Luo Qingshan spent most of her time eating and drinking in the Starry Hall. No one made trouble for her, and no one stopped her from becoming the crown princess. Everything seemed to be going so smoothly. Everything seemed to be going so well. It was like she was a spoiled princess when she came to this world. From the beginning to now, she had never encountered any obstacles. Was it because the story of the last plane was too bleak? Or was it because the original's love was too stubborn, but she ended up like this, so her life became so smooth? Luo Qingshan didn't understand and didn't want to understand. But she knew that this was an A-grade plane, and many things were not so simple. Because even if Nan Yisheng was so determined to marry her as the only princess, his affection for her was still at 40% and didn't move forward. There must be a reason. She didn't know the reason. What are you thinking about? Nan Yisheng stood behind her, picking up the comb on the table to gently count her hair. The moment his slender fingers touched her hair, her heart couldn't help palpitating. Gentle people always made people feel special warmth. Luo Qingshan laughed softly and blinked, saying, "I'm thinking about what I should wear when I get married." These days, the palace maids and mamas had sent many phoenix coronets and robes. Luo Qingshan looked very good, so she had difficulty choosing. Of course, this was just a reason to change the topic. "You can wear whatever you like. I'll just wear the other one according to your choice." Nan Yisheng put on a hollow phoenix buyao for her, saying, "Because my crown princess looks good no matter what she wears." Luo Qingshan pursed her lips, her eyes filled with joy. Her cheeks were slightly red as she said, "It seems that Your Highness the Crown Prince is very different from the rumors. What happened to floating in the world and being as light as water? It's probably because I haven't met you yet." When he said this, his eyes looked faintly outside the window. Snowflakes fell down one by one. He looked up and said softly, "Do you want to see the snow?" Luo Qingshan was stunned. She felt that the look in Nan Yisheng's eyes was inexplicably familiar. It was as if she had seen this kind of gaze in her memories on a snowy day like this before. "Sure." Luo Qingshan gently nodded. When she was about to get up, she was wrapped in a large cloak. "It's not good to catch a cold." His tone was very light, as if it was a very calm warning without any intention. The imperial palace was very big, and there were many places she had never been to. But Nan Yisheng took her to the heavenly spirit flower array in front of the Golden Hall. The snow was falling heavily, but it did not affect the holy water in the heavenly spirit flower array at all. Under the contrast of the 4 crystal beads, the azure light waves formed a scene where the sea and the sky merged into one color. "This is the place where I first met you." Nan Yisheng held her hand tightly, afraid that the floor would slip and cause her to fall. At the time, he did not understand why the first time he saw this girl. He felt like he had seen her for 10,000 years. It was like he had passed through time and space, and all the memories were frozen at this moment, becoming eternal. It was not until she appeared in the Starry Hall as an assassin that he knew why she felt so familiar. Chapter 1848. I still remember that it was Prince Nan who wanted to take in a concubine for His Highness the Crown Prince. Luo Qingshan pursed her lips, pretending to be proud. She still remembered the row of orioles and swallows standing there, looking at Nan Yisheng with admiration. At that moment, his white robes fluttered and his face was as calm as water, making him look so good. And now, she was about to become this youth's only official concubine. That's right. Hearing this, Nan Yisheng's lips curled into a faint smile. Didn't I just happen to marry you? At that time, His Highness the Crown Prince probably didn't have this plan. Luo Qingxun's clear eyes smiled. Standing in front of the heavenly spirit flower array, the cold air emitted by the sacred water seemed to penetrate her cloak and clothes, directly blowing into her heart. Nan Yisheng looked at her focused appearance, and a faint light flashed through his beautiful eyes. He muttered, "What's wrong?" Luo Qingxun narrowed her eyes and gently shook her head. "Nothing. I just felt that the heavenly spirit flower array was built very majestically and couldn't help but sigh." At that time, she was standing too far away and didn't see the Wu people's heavenly spirit flower array clearly. Now that such a majestic scene appeared in front of her eyes, she was truly shocked. "Let me tell you a story." He glanced to the side and looked in her clear eyes. "A very moving story." "A story?" Luo Qingxun was stunned for a moment before asking, "Are you going to tell me a story from 400 years ago? I've heard of it. It's indeed a—" "No." He shook his head and interrupted Luo Qingxun's words. He softly sighed. "It's a story from 10 years ago." 10 years ago? Luo Qingxun counted with her fingers, calculating her age. 10 years ago, wasn't she 5 years old? She still remembered that the original owner had no memory of anything before she was 5 years old. She drifted outside for 4 years and entered the Mu Empire when she was 9 years old. After 3 years of fighting, she became an outstanding member of Mu Hansh's hidden guards at the age of 12. In the following 3 years, they went through fire and water for Mu Hansh. Every time they returned injured, they would bandage each other's wounds. Until Qi Mo's death. When such a desolate memory suddenly appeared in her mind, she suddenly felt her emotions fluctuate inexplicably, and a thin layer of mist unconsciously appeared in her eyes. Nan Yisheng was just about to tell the story, but stopped when he saw her like this. He slowly raised his right hand and touched her eyes. He asked nervously, "What's wrong?" "No." Luo Qingxun closed her eyes and felt the warmth from his palm. Her eyebrows trembled slightly as she took a deep breath and said, "I just want to gather my emotions and listen to your moving story. Don't cry." His smile carried a hint of helplessness as he looked at her and said, "If you cry, I won't be able to continue." "All right." She slowly opened her eyes and nodded seriously. Nan Yisheng's story wasn't long, but it sounded a little sad. 10 years ago, an 8-year-old boy went to the heavenly snow peak alone to search for a medicinal ingredient. Little did he know that he encountered an avalanche and was trapped in a mountain for 10 whole days. Those 10 days were the darkest 10 days of the boy's life. There was no water, no food, and in the vast expanse of White Snow Mountain, he waited for his life to fade away bit by bit. When he was close to despair, a girl wearing a moon-white dress and carrying a clear jade lamp appeared above his head. Chapter 1849. In the end, the 5-year-old girl saved the youth and gave him all the food she had on her. The youth looked at the girl and couldn't help but fall into a daze. Her eyes were very beautiful as the clear spring on the heavenly mountain. It was as if he could see his own reflection in her eyes. At that time, the young man was a very ugly person. His face was covered with a dense mass of green things that looked like poisonous insects. These things kept spreading. His eyes, nose, ears, mouth, every part of his body was covered in them. Just as she was about to ask something, the youth covered his face. The young man hurriedly covered his face and said, "Don't look, it will scare you." He was poisoned. A very rare poison. No one knows where the antidote is. I only heard that the spirit breath grass on the heavenly snow peak can cure all strange poisons in the world. He resolutely decided to leave the Nanzhao kingdom and head to the heavenly snow peak. However, he didn't expect to encounter an avalanche and almost lose his life. "Don't be afraid." The girl raised her delicate right hand and touched the youth's face. I just want to ask if it hurts. You should be poisoned. You know, a trace of surprise flashed through the youth's eyes. It was as if he saw the hope of life. I don't know what poison it is, but the elders should know. The girl looked at him. I'll take you to the heavenly snow peak. In the end, the girl took the youth to the heavenly snow peak. When the Wu people elders saw the youth, they were very surprised. They then told him that if he wanted to get the spirit breath grass, he had to defeat the large python in the 10,000 snake cave. The youth didn't hesitate at all. He gripped the peachwood sword in his hand and headed towards the 10,000 snake cave. Little did he know that the 5-year-old girl was worried about the youth going alone, so she secretly followed him. In that great battle, the youth was seriously injured. In order to save him, the girl didn't hesitate to use the Wu people's sacred technique. The seal between her eyebrows opened and a crack appeared. The youth saw this happen with his own eyes, but he couldn't do anything. His own weakness made him unable to deal with the large python. He could only watch as the girl used her life to fight it. He didn't know how long he held on. He only knew that even when he lost all consciousness, his eyes were still open. When he opened his eyes again, the youth was already in a thatched hut under the heavenly snow peak. The poison in his body had been completely removed, and the ones taking care of him were a pair of elderly people. Apart from them, there were also 2 women dressed in white brocade. At a glance, one could tell that they were from the Wu people. The leader of the Wu people knows who you are and who poisoned you with the 3 insects and 3 flowers poison. This time, you owe the Wu people. If you become the king of the Nanzhao kingdom in the future, don't forget that the Wu people's saintess saved your life. Is she okay? This was the only question the young man asked. He suddenly felt that he had changed, because at this moment, what he cared about was not whether or not the poison in his body had been cured, but the girl's comfort. The 2 Wu people didn't tell the young man the answer. They only said, "Sir, you just need to remember that you owe our young girl." He didn't know what this sentence meant, but he knew that from that day onwards, he had never seen this girl again. He didn't even know if he would still be able to recognize her when he saw her again after 10 years. Dash, what do you think? Isn't it a very touching story? Nan Yisheng raised his right hand and gently stroked her forehead. Chapter 1850. After a while, Luo Qingshun narrowed her eyes and came back to her senses. It is indeed a sad story. Nan Yisheng looked in her eyes for a long time. Finally, his eyes, which were as deep as the sea, gradually dimmed. There were many things he wanted to ask in his heart, but he didn't ask in the end, because the girl standing in front of him didn't seem to remember anything. Large snowflakes fell with the wind, landing on his hair and shoulders. Luo Qingshun saw that half of his body was outside the umbrella and raised her right hand to pat his shoulder. But no matter how sad the story is, it doesn't matter. It's good that I'm by your side now. If her guess wasn't wrong, the boy in the story should be Nan Yisheng. After all, he was born in the royal family and had to bear the fate of being framed. Whether it was what he ate or used, he had to be careful. Thinking of this, she couldn't help feeling a bit of heartache for Nan Yisheng. He had been walking on thin ice since he was young, but his personality was still so gentle. Even those bottomless eyes, she often couldn't see through them. Nan Yisheng looked at Luo Qingshun, who pursed her lips and had a faint smile on her face. In the sky full of snow, his heart couldn't help trembling. It was like she was the only person in the world who didn't scheme against him and could stand firmly by his side. His cold and lonely heart in this snowy land deeply trembled for the first time. Ding! Affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 50%. The sudden system notification stunned Luo Qingshun. Before she could come back to her senses, Nan Yisheng suddenly grabbed her raised right hand. In the next second, she fell into a warm embrace. He didn't say anything, but the strength of his hands around her was very deep. Nan Yisheng. She softly opened her mouth and called his name. He replied in a slightly trembling voice, "Un." Luo Qingshun had a very special feeling in his warm embrace. She felt that the one hugging her was the real Nan Yisheng. Persistent, patient, domineering, deep. It wasn't the usual, gentle. After that day, Nan Yixing treated her even better than before. He almost never left her side. Every day, he would wake up early and return to the side chamber to personally comb her hair. In the afternoon, he would bring a large heater and sit in front of the window to look at the snowy scenery outside. He also liked to make some snacks for her: osmanthus cake, peach blossom soup, pear blossom persimmon cake, and so on. As the sun set in the west, he brewed a pot of hot tea and enjoyed the tranquil time. The day before the wedding, he took a sip of Biluakun and looked at Luo Qingshun quietly. Does little Chun like this kind of day? Hearing this, Luo Qingshun turned her eyes and looked into his slightly deep eyes. She asked with some confusion, "Who in this world doesn't like this kind of life?" She couldn't see the meaning in his bottomless eyes, but she knew that there were many things that he hadn't told her. If the time of ease is always short, do you also like this ease? This question sounded very contradictory, but Luo Qingshun understood the meaning behind it. Chapter 1851. Nan Yixing looked at her for a long time and finally smiled. He raised his right hand and rubbed her head. "You're right." Outside the window, the snow danced in the sky. They looked at each other and smiled. If the rings of time stopped at this moment, it would be a beautiful thing. But whether it was him, her, or everything in the world had to move forward with time. No one could escape the arrangement of fate. On the day of the wedding, she wore a phoenix coronet and a red gown embroidered with pomegranate flowers. She wore a 10,000-year auspicious hairpin on the top of her head. She was admired by tens of thousands of people. Nan Yixing stood by her side, holding her hand tightly from beginning to end. The sound of gongs and drums kept ringing in her ears. The whole world seemed to be blessing her. She easily became Nan Yixing's only official wife. No, to be exact, she was his wife. The first bow to heaven and earth, the second bow to the parents. Husband and wife bowed to each other. He held her hand and silently said in his heart, "Qingshun, no matter what happens in the future, please believe in me." On the wedding night, the red candles swayed gently. Joy and pleasure meeting in the mortal world. Looking up at the sky, who could understand the prosperity? Just like that, she became his wife, his rightful wife. Originally, he thought that these days would continue for a while. Little did he know that changes always came too quickly. On the 7th day after the wedding, Nan Yixing hurriedly returned to the Star Palace and quickly tidied up his clothes. Luo Qingshun walked out of the inner hall and looked at him in confusion. "What's wrong?" "Tidy up your things. We'll leave for the Mu Kingdom in the afternoon." Nan Yixing looked at her and said, "Father has a strange illness. This matter should be related to the concubine from the Mu Kingdom that was just taken in a few days ago." "You mean Liangji?" Luo Qingshun frowned. She had some impression of this person. When Nan Wang took her as his concubine, Luo Qingshun had noticed this person. At that time, she was already Nan Yixing's official wife. Liangji's rainbow dress heaven and earth dance stunned everyone and directly caught Nan Wang's eye. But Luo Qingshun knew very well that she had been looking in her direction the whole time. Yes, Nan Yixing's expression was very serious, but he was still very patient when talking to her. He said softly, "You should have seen him at that banquet." "I remember." Luo Qingshun nodded. "Where is she now? Have you interrogated her?" "She has been sent to prison." Nan Yixing frowned. "I didn't get anything out of her." She refused to admit it. Luo Qingshun's eyebrows moved slightly, and a touch of worry flashed through her eyes. "Why don't I ask her?" "Don't." Nan Yixing responded almost instantly. He narrowed his deep eyes and said, "Don't go to a place like prison." She nodded slightly and looked at him seriously with her clear eyes. Then she smiled and said, "Okay." Although she promised him on the surface, she still took the opportunity to go to the prison when he went to the Golden Palace to bid farewell. "Your Highness the Crown Princess." Nan Yixing's guards were standing on both sides of the door. They were naturally respectful when they saw her death. Luo Qingshun faintly nodded and said with a calm face, "His Highness let me ask Liang Ji a few more questions. We will go to the Mu country to find the antidote later." The guards standing at the front looked at each other before opening a path. "Your Highness the Crown Princess, please." Luo Qingshun walked in with light steps. After taking 2 steps, she raised her right hand and said, "You don't need to follow me in. His Highness has a few questions for me to ask her alone." Chapter 1852. Liang-ji was locked in the innermost secret cell of the heavenly prison. It was a death cell surrounded by iron walls that didn't even have a small window. Liang-ji wore a white prison uniform with her long hair hanging down. She leaned against the wall and only slowly opened her eyes when she saw someone enter. Luo Qingshun could clearly feel a faint light flashing through her eyes the moment she saw her. "I wonder why Crown Prince Consort has come." Liang-ji knew that the woman in front of her was the last straw to save her life. But after several years of being an assassin, she knew that she couldn't reveal her true feelings at this time. Otherwise, once the other party saw through her, she would have lost half the battle. Little did she know that in the next second, Luo Qingshun shrugged her shoulders and her pair of bright eyes seemed to see through her thoughts. Her lips curled into an extremely faint smile as she said, "I know very well what kind of person you are, and I also know very well what you're thinking." "You." Liang-ji was speechless, and her expression unconsciously became a bit flustered. "After all, with your current identity, you should more or less call me senior." Luo Qingshun's gaze fell on the pattern on her shoulder. It was the pattern that every single one of Mu Hanch's secret guards had, except for her. At that time, the original owner was afraid of pain, and tears had already fallen drop by drop before the needle had even landed on her shoulder. Mu Hanch, who was sitting on the high seat, slightly knitted his brows and then waved his hand. "Forget it." The memories of the past became clearer under the passage of time. She could more or less understand why the original owner liked Mu Hanch so much. It wasn't that that man didn't have any love for her, but because he was too cold. He was so cold that he could sacrifice anything, including the secret guards who had once risked their lives for him, including her. "Since you know who I am, then you should know your own identity." Liang-ji bit her lips and looked at her. "What is your purpose for coming here?" "My identity?" Luo Qingshun's lips curled up and she narrowed her eyes. "I'm the Crown Prince Consort of Nanzhao Kingdom. My purpose for coming here is to marry Nan Yixing." "What did you say?" "You actually betrayed His Highness Mu." Liang-ji's face was filled with disbelief. Before she became Mu Hanch's secret guard, Song Lu had told her that Little Chun was the most outstanding among Mu Hanch's secret guards. And Little Chun, for his sake, would go back no matter how dangerous the place was. Even if he was seriously injured, he would never take a step back. How could such deep feelings change so easily? Did I betray him? Luo Qingshun narrowed her cold eyes and sneered. "From the day Chiamo died, I was no longer her secret guard." For a long time, the air was silent. Liang-ji did not respond to her. She just closed her eyes and sighed. Luo Qingshun looked up at her and said, "I'll ask you 2 questions. If you always answer me, maybe I can help you leave here." "Really?" "Of course." There was a faint sparkle in Luo Qingshun's eyes as she said, "First, was it you who poisoned King Nan? If you did, where's the antidote?" "It wasn't me who poisoned him." She raised her red phoenix eyes and frowned. "My purpose for coming here is to find you, not to harm Prince Nan." "You came to find me?" Luo Qingshun looked at her in confusion. "But I've never received any request from you to meet me." After all, Liang-ji had entered the palace for more than a day or 2. If she wanted to see her, it wouldn't be difficult. Chapter 1853. Luo Qingshun was stunned when she heard this, and a trace of doubt flashed in her eyes. "You mean that you came to find me, but were stopped by His Highness?" "Yes." Liang-ji gave a chuckle and crossed her arms. "I'm very envious of you. After all, you don't need to bitterly love someone else, and can receive the love others give you." Liang-ji's eyes were filled with sadness, and there seemed to be a story in those slender eyes that others didn't know about. At this moment, Luo Qingshun did not doubt her words. After all, there was no benefit in lying to her. The second question. She slightly lowered her eyes, and there was a trace of worry in her clear eyes as she asked, "Is Song Lu well? You still care about her?" Liang-ji gave a soft laugh. "I thought you had already forgotten about her. It seems like you won't be leaving first." Don't. Liang-ji narrowed her eyes and said, Song Lu is very good. After you left, His Highness never let her participate in any missions. She's eating and drinking well. But Song Lu wanted me to tell you something. I don't know if you still want to hear it. What is it? She said that since she left, don't come back. Liang Ji paused before continuing, don't ever come back. Although these words came from Liang Ji's mouth, Luo Qingshun could still feel her heart tremble. Song Lu. In a long time, she felt the most heartache for the supporting female lead. No, perhaps she couldn't be considered a supporting female lead. She had always existed as a guardian, protecting Qi Mo, protecting her. But she had worked so hard and Qi Mo still died. I've asked everything I need to ask. Luo Qingshun's brows slightly moved as she said, I will find someone to take you away in the evening. You could just follow her. As for whether you want to return to the Mu country or go somewhere else, it's up to you. She said these words to Liang Ji, and it was completely from the bottom of her heart, because she knew how painful the process of becoming a shadow guard was, and how bleak the ending would be. Wait, I have a question for you. Luo Qingshun was about to turn and leave when Liang Ji called out to her. She narrowed her eyes and said, You said, Prince Nan, is Prince Nan well? Her eyebrows trembled slightly, clearly trying to hide her emotions. But in Luo Qingshun's eyes, her emotions were completely written on her face. She was actually worried about Prince Nan? Not so good. Luo Qingshun told the truth. She narrowed her eyes and said, His Highness, and I will go to Mu country to look for the antidote. If His Highness guessed correctly, Prince Nan should have been poisoned by spirit-altering powder. What? Liang Ji's eyes widened as her face instantly turned pale. The soul-altering powder was a secret medicine of the Mu kingdom. The poisoned person would fall into a deep sleep, as if their body and soul had been separated. If the poisoned person did not find the antidote within 15 days, he would never be able to return to his position. It seems that you really care about Prince Nan. Luo Qingshun took a deep breath and said, Don't worry, His Highness, and I will find a way to get the antidote back. You just need to ensure your own safety first. You don't have to worry about anything else. But Luo Qingshun interrupted her words with a faint cold glint in her eyes. Don't forget your own status, unless you want to see your close friend die in front of you. As soon as her voice fell, she waved her sleeve and turned to leave the prison. Standing outside the door, she looked at the blue sky and the snowflakes slowly falling down. Chapter 1854. Even though they were in a hurry, Nan Yixing had brought everything about her. After all, the weather in the Mu country was colder than in the Nanzhao country. It was always better to bring more clothes. It will take 7 days to come and go. Luo Qingshun frowned slightly. You don't have to bring so many things for me. Thinking back, the original owner had spent nearly half a month on the road from the Mu country to the Nanzhao country. Now that they were saving someone, they naturally had to travel through the night. But Nan Yixing's pace wasn't as fast as she had imagined. Adding on the fact that he was carrying a lot of luggage, it was even slower. It doesn't matter. He looked out the window and narrowed his eyes. The poison in Fu Wang's body will be temporarily suppressed by Aunt Luo Exen using the secret techniques of the Wu people. Don't worry too much. Luo Qingshun looked at his deep eyes and couldn't help feeling a bit of heartache. When this kind of life and death matter really happened in front of them, it was hard for anyone to accept. Luo Qingshun didn't know what to say. She just felt that at least it was good to be with him. You shouldn't comfort me. Luo Qingshun pursed her lips. She raised her right hand and did the same thing he did to her before. She gently rubbed her head. It's all right. The next second, he suddenly raised his right hand and tightly grasped her wrist. He held her hand in his warm palm. It's good that you're here. Nan Yixing really wasn't in a hurry on the road. Everything was based on her health. But because of Luo Qingshun's stubbornness, it took them 5 days to reach the Mu country. Standing on the long street and looking at the white snow, her eyes couldn't help turning red. This was a feeling that came from the heart. Mixed with all the memories and thoughts of the original owner, it spread in her heart little by little. It's good that we brought a lot of warm things. If we stay in an inn, it won't be cold. Nan Yixing held an umbrella and looked over. Seeing her red eyes, he froze and his heart couldn't help but tremble. What's wrong? Luo Qingchun heard this and gently shook her head. Maybe the snow fell into my eyes. As her voice fell, she raised her head and smiled like a warm wind. Where are we going to find the antidote next? Do you have a clue? I think the antidote has already come to find us. Nan Yixing's deep eyes looked not far away. Several people wearing the clothes of the Imperial Guards came over with swords. They respectfully bowed to Nan Yixing. The Mu Wang knows that Your Highness the Crown Prince has come to the Mu country, so he specially ordered us to wait here to welcome you. As his voice fell, Nan Yangz's, Nanz's. Luo Qingchun didn't look away and directly came forward. Mu Wang? She frowned slightly in confusion. The old Mu king suddenly passed away the day before yesterday. Now, the Mu kingdom is under the command of His Highness Mu. Yesterday, the coronation ceremony was completed. The Imperial Guard nodded slightly, his gaze carrying a profound emotion. Luo Qingchun narrowed her eyes. Although her face was still expressionless, she was very surprised. This meant that Mu Hanch was now the Mu country's king. No wonder their identities were exposed as soon as they entered the Mu city. The Mu Wang definitely couldn't do this, but Mu Hanch was different. He was a meticulous person. He had schemed and plotted for this throne for so many years, hiding so many forces, and finally got everything he wanted. Suddenly, she felt that the original owner wasn't worth it. She did so many stupid things for him, but in the end, she didn't even have the qualifications to stand by his side. Chapter 1855. Nan Yixing quickly shielded her behind him, his beautiful eyes carrying an unfathomable dark light. He narrowed his eyes, his thin lips softly saying, "Please lead the way. Your Highness Nan, this way please." The Imperial bodyguards were very respectful towards him, treating them as if they were guests. Luo Qingchun was vaguely worried. If Mu Hanch had directly sent people to kill them, she wouldn't have been so nervous. But now that he was treating them with such courtesy, she really couldn't understand what he wanted to do. The road from the long street to the palace was covered in white snow. Nan Yixing tightly held her hand. Luo Qingchun looked at his back and felt a special sense of security. As long as Nan Yixing was here, she wasn't afraid of anything, even though she still only had 50% favorability towards him, which was stagnant. Nan Yixing didn't say anything along the way, quietly walking. When they reached the entrance of the side hall, the Imperial bodyguard cupped his hands and said, "Your Highness, please wait here. Mu Wang will immediately come over after court." Amen. Nan Yixing nodded indifferently, a faint Li Guang flashing through his eyes. He glanced at Luo Qingchun beside him, but her expression didn't change. "Are you used to it?" "What?" She actually didn't understand what Nan Yixing meant. She only felt that his unfathomable eyes held an indescribable emotion so deep. "It's nothing. It's just that the Mu kingdom is especially cold. I'm afraid you won't be used to it." He touched her frozen, smiling face and said, "Come here." Luo Qingchun blinked her clear eyes and obediently walked to his side. There were snacks and tea on the table. The snacks were the original owner's favorite osmanthus cake and cherry blossom cake, while the tea was the original owner's favorite tea, biluakan. The air was filled with the faint scent of sandalwood, and the entire room instantly warmed up. Nan Yixing sat down and picked up the blue and white porcelain cup on the table. He was about to brew a pot of hot tea for her. "Wait, don't move." Luo Qingchun's eyes widened. She bit her lips and said, "We're in a foreign country. It's best if we don't touch these things." As he finished speaking, he didn't forget to pull Nan Yixing to a seat far away. "Right now, we're trapped. Dong, and the others have been placed in and outside the palace. Do you have any ideas on how to get the antidote?" Hearing this, Nan Yixing's dark eyes stared at her intently, not shifting at all. After a long while, he said, "I'll think of a way to get the antidote. Don't worry. But are you that afraid that King Mu will poison us?" Nan Yixing narrowed his eyes, and there was a faint light in his beautiful eyes. It seemed that he had been waiting for an answer that he wanted to know. Luo Qingchun tapped her right hand out of habit as her eyebrows moved slightly. "Mu Hanch is much more shrewd than we thought. Do you know him well? Nan Yisheng's lips were thin, and there was a faint trace of expectation in his eyes. Perhaps he still couldn't bear to part with her. He couldn't bear to part with the person sitting beside him, but he still brought her back. I don't know him well, but this person is cold to the extreme. In order to achieve his goals, he would do anything. He invited us here today, so there must be some unspeakable matter. Luo Qingshan frowned, then turned to look at him and said, "Why don't we run? The best plan is to find a way to get the antidote." Nan Yisheng didn't say anything. He only narrowed his eyes, and there was a trace of worry in his eyes. Two voices were constantly colliding in his heart. One wanted her to leave, and the other wanted her to stay. Chapter 1856. His Highness Mu has arrived. Before Nan Yisheng could give her any response, an announcement came from outside the door. In the next second, Mu Hanch walked in. He was dressed in a black robe, and his eyes carried a cold glint. His entire body was exuding a coldness that kept people 1,000 miles away. From the moment he came in, his eyes had been on Luo Qingshan the entire time, never leaving her. His Highness the Crown Prince of Nanzhao Kingdom has come from afar. Please excuse me for not going out to meet you. Mu Hanch's lips curled into a faint smile. Please take a seat. This was the first time Luo Qingshan and the original host had seen Mu Hanch smile at her. It was as if a snow lotus had bloomed on an iceberg, causing one's heart to tremble. The only time was when he smiled at someone else. She should be the Empress of Mu Kingdom by now. Nan Yisheng nodded lightly. It should be us who have troubled His Highness Mu. He glanced at Luo Qingshan from the corner of his eyes. When he saw her clear eyes looking at Mu Hanch attentively, he felt upset. In the end, he still fell in love. From the past to the present, from the present to the future. How could that be? It is our Mu Kingdom's honor to have Your Highness and Her Highness the Crown Prince and Her Highness the Crown Prince coming to Mu Kingdom. These snacks were all prepared in advance. He glanced at the table with a chilling gaze. Why hasn't it been moved? Is it not to Your Highness's liking? Before Nan Yisheng could speak, Mu Hanch's expression instantly changed. He said to the eunuch behind him, "Men, tear apart the body of the imperial chef who made the snacks and throw him into a mass grave." "Yes, His Highness Mu." The eunuch was startled, but he immediately followed up. Beads of sweat dripped down his forehead. "His Highness Mu need not be so angry." Luo Qingshan frowned slightly. She walked to the table with a faint smile. She poured herself a cup of tea and drank it in one gulp. "I think it's quite good." He looked at her, just like the first time he saw her. His eyes were deep and blurred. But now, they were already serving different masters. He was the king of Mu Kingdom, and she was the princess of Nanzhao Kingdom's crown prince. If Your Highness the Crown Princess thinks it's good, then it's good. Mu Hanch's cold eyes narrowed as his face regained its deathly stillness. A smile hung on the corner of his mouth from beginning to end. But Luo Qingshan knew that this smile represented endless indifference. Then, "Thank you very much, Muong." She looked at him with eyes that were no longer filled with expectation and worship, but with indifference. Mu Hanch quietly looked at Luo Qingshan for a few seconds. His eyes were as deep as a bottomless lake. He could clearly feel his heart thumping, and it was extremely painful. It was as if something that had been marked, something that belonged to him forever and ever, suddenly no longer belonged to him. There was another man standing beside her, a man who would never fall in love with her. However, this man had personally brought her to the Mu Nation instead of having her stay in Nanzhao forever. He didn't know what he was thinking. He only knew that he saw a trace of greed in Nan Yisheng's eyes. Once a person became greedy, they would be bound by worldly emotions and fall into a quagmire that was like an endless abyss. Thus, he had never allowed himself to become greedy, no matter if it was friendship, kinship, or love. Literally, take good care of this humble one's esteemed guest for the next few days. If you neglect him in the slightest, you can bring your head to see me. He looked at the eunuch behind him and said with a smile, "Your Highness, please stay here for a few more days. There are no forbidden areas in the palace. If you want to leave, just let me know."